All right. Good evening, everyone.
Recording in progress.
This is a meeting of the Zoning and Planning Committee on August 17th, 2026. I'm Lyle Baker, Chair of the committee, and I'm joined at the outset of the meeting by several members of the committee in the room and several members of the council who are not members of the committee. Welcome, as well as other honored guests. We're joined by the Vice Chair, Councilor Wright, Councilor Guest from Ward 5, Councilor Donovich from Ward 4, online, Councilor Albright from Ward 2. We've also the law department's represented by Jonah Temple. The Chief Administrative Officer is here, Mr. Morris online. Mr. Wewell is here. This is the Deputy Director of Planning. And we also have representatives of the Planning Department in this, and I will ask them to introduce them when they come to talk to us. And we're joined in the room by members of the council, Councilor Block, Councilor Roth, also Councilor Maliki, and I think that's all the councilors present. And then we're going to be joined by prospective appointees. So before we begin, let me just explain a couple of matters of procedure and just the information attached to the packet. We have 4 individuals who are been willing to step up and assume important roles in the city, and the mayor has asked them to serve, and we're here to hear from them and to appoint them. In another case, we have the current member of the Historical Commission, who's the chair, who's being reappointed, and is a part of the background for this discussion because we're seeing a lot of developments happening both at the state and local level. As part of the agenda, I asked the clerk to provide to the members of the Zoning Board of Appeals designate a copy of the changes that have been recently made in the state zoning statute, specifically relating to the Zoning Board of Appeals process and how it works on variances, just because it may be not something you're familiar with. I don't expect them to be expert. We have Mr. Temple here, who's from the law department, but at least I wanted to have the committee and the candidates all aware of that. Also, because everyone is assuming a role, which is an important part of public process, and we talk about process a lot, I provided to them a copy of the land use procedures guidelines that we have for special permits, because this is something the city council has developed over time that may be helpful to them in the role that they're going to undertake. And then also, because historic preservation is such an important part of the city, incident to the conversation we're going to have with the reappointee, in that case, excuse me, Mr. Cornelius, I asked that the clerk provide some background from the city website about historic preservation, again, because we have some relatively new councilors who I'm sure are well familiar with this, but the public may not be. So I thought it'd be helpful to have that as part of the agenda. What I do expect going forward in the September meeting, because there's so many changes going on at the state and some perhaps to come, Mr. Lee, who's our normal representative from the law department, is away this week, but I anticipate asking him to give us a briefing at the beginning of the meeting in September, so we'll have some update on what is going on at the state level rather than get too deeply into it tonight. But I think it's important for us to understand the context within which we are operating. And we are joined by the Vice President, Councilor Kalis, Councilor Farrell from Ward 8, and online also Councilor Gordon, a member of the committee. Welcome. Okay, so with that, our first candidate is Chris Markowitz. And Chris, where is Chris? There you go. Over here. Yeah. Can you come up this way? I'm sorry, the city were behind me. Oh,
It's a big kid stands.
There's one big piece of background. There was a question about the timing of the appointments, and what is the Chief Administrative Officer has indicated and sent a note to me that Mr. Markowitz could proceed tonight. All of the candidates can be voted tonight, and we can pass on them at the council level, but the effective date of the appointments of the second 2 candidates would be deferred in order to make sure an orderly transition for the Zoning Board of Appeals, because of some matters they've already got ongoing, and new members can't vote on something they haven't heard. So that's the little bit of procedure that is a little different, and a copy of that memo will go as part of the report. But first, welcome. Mr. Markowitz is known to us as former Councilor Markowitz. And it's a pleasure to have you back among us. And I would ask if you would like to say a little bit about your background. Your resume and information is attached to the agenda. But for those who don't know you well, it might be helpful to have you outline a little bit of your background and why you're interested in this role. And then I'll turn it over to colleagues to ask questions.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate that. Well, for starters, I served as city councilor for 6 years. The whole time I was on land use, I was on real property reuse. I was on public safety and transportation as vice chair. And then I also served on the OPEB board. I was the council's representative of OPEB. There's always one councilor on the OPEB board. That's the pension and other liabilities committee. And I was on the audit committee for a while. I am a CPA. I was probably the only CPA on the audit committee, which is always interesting, listening to everybody else puzzle their ways through trying to read financial statements. It's interesting. I also worked on a couple of ad hoc things this year. I was in early, trying to look around the room, see who else was on it, but in February, March, I guess I was out of the country for a while, but I worked on the pension liability, the analysis for that, and the recommendations that the mayor then took back and was able to, get a working agreement with the city, with the union to basically defer the payoff date for the pension liability. That was, by the way, I'm just editorializing here, I think that has been one of the most significant accomplishments of the administration so far. If you asked me before we did that, if we had a chance of having that succeed, I would have taken money on the other side. So that was a big deal. And then recently, because I couldn't stay away from this stuff, I worked on I chaired a group of citizens that was selected by PS&T to develop a plan to institute trials relative to the parking ban, see if there were ways that we could test and see what would happen if we actually did relax the parking ban over time. So I've kind of had this continuous involvement. I mean, I actually, interestingly enough, my first foray into Newton politics, I worked as a management consultant. So I traveled a great deal in my younger days, and it always prevented me from getting very involved in civic affairs. And when I finally retired from that first career, I went into the second career of the council. But in between that, I actually worked on a 40B neighborhood, 40B that never got built. But I learned an awful lot about pro forma financials and all the requirements, and looking at the financing schemes and so forth that are used to create those types of opportunities. So I guess I've just been involved for a long time. Can't stay away. I know some of my colleagues probably say, "Why are you back? Didn't you learn with us in the first time around?" But no, it's really great. Newton's a wonderful city. We are served by the department people. We've got 19 departments, and I'd have to say across the board, the people I've worked with over the years have been really high quality. They do the best they can with the resources they have. And, Newton is a good place to participate in government. I wish more people took it seriously and got a turn at it. I'm an older man. It would be nicer to see, younger people running for office and getting involved in these commissions. They're going to inherit the city, and the people, maybe 30s is still too young. There's still, family things and so forth. But by the time they're in the 40s, I'd like to see a lot more participation from people. So you knew I was going to talk, right?
Well, look, if that's the price of admission for you to come and do this, we're up for it. We're just grateful for your willingness, given that your sentence was up, to come back. It really is a great opportunity.
I violated parole.
Questions or comments from members of Councilor Taylor? Councilor Albright, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand raised. Thank you.
You want me to go first? Yes? Okay.
Yes.
So I worked with Chris for many years on the council, and I know the quality of his work, and I am impressed by it. And I know he understands housing needs we have in Newton. So I'm glad for that to be going on to the ZBA. And I worked with Chris when we were trying to convince Mayor Fuller and the retirement board to change the rate of increase for the retirement. And we were all on the same page. And, you know, I'm so thankful that finally, Chris, you must know this, that the retirement board has lowered the increase to 3.5%, which is fabulous. So I am thrilled that you're willing to take on this mantle again and do this work for the city again. And you're not in my ward, so I can't make the motion to approve, but I'm sorry that I can't do that. So thank you very much for being willing to serve.
Thank you, Councilor Wright and Councilor Getz.
So I have worked with, Mr. Markowitz and with all his knowledge of land use and going through, Riverside and the details and just really understanding it and getting into into the mud on there, it's gonna bring a lot to the ZBA. So I look forward for you being in the ZBA.
Riverside was a workout for sure.
It's coming back again.
We had 90, is Ms. Wewell on? I think she's on. We had 90 conditions in that order. That was Riverside 2 or 3, 90 conditions or 91. And every one of those takes like hours to hammer out, right? 90 conditions.
Councilor Getz.
Well, I look forward to seeing you on the ZBA, all of the expertise that you'll bring to the table. I think of it as being specifically the financial piece of it. You know, I think that's hugely essential, you know, in terms of being able to lead the conversation at the ZBA. I sort of feel as if we're very lucky to have anybody step up, you know, and I feel as if it's getting very exciting, you know, and I think that all of us are going to do a deep dive on these variances because I think of, you know, it's going to impact and be, you know, potentially a tool that we're all going to have to sort of learn how it's going to work, you know, in context. But welcome, thank you, and I'm very excited.
Happy to be.
Other members, I have a question or comment on a couple of things, just again, for the public who may not be as familiar with the zoning board of appeals. It has at least 3 major responsibilities: the variance process, and when a particular situation is proposed as a hardship, and the state legislation has relaxed that standard to some degree, and we're all trying to watch that in order to, we hope, at least for myself, I have to indicate, I hope that the ZBA does not become the first resort, but still remains the last resort to remedy a situation that is untenable for an individual property owner. Second, they review any appeals from the decisions of the Building and Department Inspection Services Commissioner, specifically relating to interpretation of law, and that is an important part of their role, as I understand it. Mr. Temple can correct me if I'm wrong. And then any of the 40B projects that come through for comprehensive permit come through the zoning board of appeals. So it is quite substantial jurisdiction and importance. And again, just echoing colleagues, we appreciate it that your willingness to do this job. Can you say a little about public participation, because that's a matter that people are interested in, and how the board functions?
Well, I think the availability of the people who serve on these boards for that type of thing is critical. You know, I used to always, so I guess it comes back to, Chair, how much work you do up front. And part of the work up front is understanding from the public what, you know, be it the petitioner or be it in the butter, but everyone who's kind of a stakeholder in the petition itself to understand their position. I used to, when I was in land use, I'd like to say that if I put myself in the shoes of the petitioner or in a butter, or anybody else who was a stakeholder in that petition, that I would have the confidence that they had done the work to familiarize themselves with what the petition actually was about, what the regulations, what the law was that applied to it, and that I had heard and considered the commentary from all people who had a stake, you know, and that could be the whole city in some cases, but had a stake in that petition. So to me, that's public participation, is being open to it and making sure. I don't think we get city email when you're on the ZBA, which is the thing, because that's the council. So as you all know, you know, they come in. And that's actually a good line of connection for you. So I don't know how you totally replace that, but I think being responsive to anybody who, wants to be involved in this, and certainly understanding their position, you know, so many, back to using the land use example, while someone being pro or for the petition outside of the petitioner doesn't necessarily get you to vote, I think that you do consider a lot what you hear from the parties to the petition, and often the ability to feedback that feedback back again helps make these petitions more desirable, more implementable. So it's a dynamic process, not to overuse that word, but I think sourcing, you know, knowing where people are with it and what they think, and any information they can offer you about it is essential to the process, absolutely essential.
Okay.
You're not really, I like to say, you know, for the counselors, you're not really a statesperson. You might think you're a statesperson and you get up and you want to, you know, invoke some kind of legislation, but you're really a representative. You know, you listen to your people, who your constituents are. And that also allows you, I know people, they look at politicians and they say, well, they used to say this and now they say this. And I'm like, that's the nature of politics. You come in with a position, you hear what's going on, you learn about it, your opinion can change, you know, and it's all because of that. But you listen, you can't just dismiss what they say. They always have, even if they're not completely informed, they always know something that adds to the argument. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilor Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, oh. Councilor Block.
Oh,
No,
sorry,
you go, sorry.
yes.
Okay, well, I was just gonna say, Mr. Markowitz has known me since I was a child, I think, maybe a preteen. But
Very cute.
yeah, as the tenor, or as the bass who sat 2 rows behind me when I was a soprano, and then 1 row when I became a tenor, at Corpus Christi St. Bernard, which is part of a nice lineage of Ward 4 counselors that have come through our church, from Polly Bryson to Counselor Gentile to Counselor Markowitz and now me.
Counselor Cody, even though he's Ward 3.
Yes, and I'm forgetting
I
someone.
think there's others too.
I'm forgetting someone, but yeah. So I'm happy to make the motion to approve.
Before you do, I want to recognize Councilor Block, who's not a member of the committee, but.
Thank you, Chair. And it is nice to see Mr. Markowitz dive back in. I'm curious what you think about this variance, the variance responsibility that the chair mentioned, and this transition, this change at the state level. I don't know if you followed it that much. It's brand new. It's my understanding the governor signed it on July 6th. And there still aren't state guidelines issued regarding it.
There's nothing that I saw in actual state posting that reflects those changes yet. It looks like it's verbatim what it used to be. You're talking about Article 10 probably?
Yes,
Okay, yeah.
yes, and the standard, the changing standard for approving zoning variances. Any thoughts about that?
Well, again, to me, this is kind of like people talk about safe harbor too sometimes. To me, every petition stands on its own. It has its own merits. So I don't know, because some people might say the bar was lowered. I don't necessarily look at it that way. I think you still have the same considerations. Do good, to use vernacular, do good, don't do bad. If it makes things better, it's a positive thing. Adding housing is a positive thing. Fixing safety issues is a positive thing. Adding revenue to the city's coffers is a positive thing. Those are all good things. You have to look at the downside of it. I think they all stand on their own. I will tell you one thing about that. I did look at the text, and I saw also a markup of changes to it. I don't understand why the paragraph on conditions was struck. It was struck in its entirety. And I can't believe you can't attach petitions to an order. I mean, I can't imagine that. So there's gotta be, I did reach out to Attorney Temple on this, and I think he's saying, well, there's work to be done on this. We gotta play a few hands, I guess, with this and see how it actually works.
Okay, thank you.
But again, I don't think it necessarily lowers anything. I think it's, I think you apply, you've got regulations, you've got ordinances, you've got common sense. And you look at that stuff and you just say, okay, is this a good deal or is it not a good deal? And I think the other thing, I didn't mention this earlier, but regarding public input, even though we don't necessarily talk about precedent when we decide these things, I think we are responsible for consistency. So if I let you, overhang your porch by 3 feet or something because it's de minimis and nobody cares about it, somebody else comes in 2 months later and you decide, well, I'm not gonna give you the overhang on the porch. I'm using an old example of something. That to me wouldn't be correct, You need to be consistent when you apply these things, so that's something else to keep in mind. And that shouldn't, even though I said they're all ad hoc, they are ad hoc, but they all there's a certain kind of way of doing these types of things that promotes fairness.
Thank you. We have a motion. Anyone else from the council or otherwise that wish to be heard? Having heard about public participation, I'm careful here. All those in favor will say aye. Opposed? Abstentions? I'd say that's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome to stick around if you want or go home.
Look forward to, I'd love to hear the other candidates. Look forward to working with you all again.
Ian, would you mind coming up? And one of the reasons we like you at the table is so the microphone can pick you up as well as the camera. Can the folks on Zoom hear what is being said? Okay, or do we need to bump?
Volume loud enough, or does it need to be?
Everybody hear what you need? to hear?
Susan wasn't loud enough.
A little higher would be better.
Okay. So, okay, welcome. And again, we have the background you have, and you're really quite distinguished career, and we're glad you're willing to serve. Do you want to give us some, again, for the benefit of the public and others who have not had the opportunity, can you say a little bit about your background and why you're interested in this role?
Certainly. My name is Sapir Ng, and during the day I work as an architect. I've been working in the field for 25 years, and I've designed buildings from a variety of scales, from large-scale healthcare hospitals, life science buildings, academic buildings, commercial buildings. In the past 10 years, I've worked more in residential and some of the 40B buildings, around in Massachusetts. And throughout my career, I've worked in buildings around the Boston area, around the US and internationally. So I work in front of community in a variety of geographic locations, and I understand that zoning regulation change and a ripple effect to the community for generations. And for the residents, and it's not just rules, and it will affect their life. And my wife and I moved to Newton 6 years ago, and our kids go to Newton Public School, and we really love the city. And the new public school building was built, and Lincoln area, my kids go to Lincoln area. We really admire the process, and I look at CPA as in the juncture of design, regulation, and also community engagement. And so I found, this is also a role, an opportunity for me to learn, and I'm new, and I'm excited to learn the process and hope to be able to serve thoughtfully.
Thank you. Questions from members of the committee? The vice
So
chair.
you said you've done some 40B projects in Massachusetts, like about how many have you designed?
Can we count? Maybe 5. Yeah, I can. Most recently, the one in Rochester in Boston, it's kind of a senior 40B, and I'm starting one in Mansfield, Massachusetts. And yeah, that is about it. And I also work on other variety of building types as well.
So I saw a few pictures of some of your designs, which are, I like, they're visually inviting and things like that. And are you able to do that in your 40B designs? Because they're usually somewhat constrained by costs?
That's a very good question. And I believe that public building, 40B doesn't need to be cheap. A good design doesn't need to be cheap. You can use more cost-effective material and can be able to design a well-designed building. Doesn't have to look cheap, or we can still work within the budget and can have, for example, one of them you mentioned, is the senior housing project it's also historic project in Auburn, Mass. And it has won quite a few design awards. It's a very simple building and you don't have to do, but it's a well-designed space that it can be serve a bigger part of better parts aspects.
Thank you. And being an architect, you'll bring a lot to the table for the ZBA too, which will be good. Because sometimes they'll say, we may ask for something and then they say, well, we can't do it, but it sounds like you'll be able to say, yeah, you can do it.
And also when I look at it is in my role, I've been designing buildings in the past 25 years. And I look at the application, it's not looking at just application with data, and I look at how the building sits within the community, the safety, the scale. I understand that it would affect the community, how it looks, but also on the other hand, community needs to continue to evolve. It can't fix in time.
Thank you.
Councillor Gett?
Thank you. Thank you for applying and stepping up, because I feel as if the skill set that you will bring, as Councillor Wright is suggesting, is essential, just in terms of the purview of architecture. I don't know how constrained you will be, in terms of being able to apply. You can, yes, be additive and you can in the moment, sort of make comment, but it sort of seemed in terms of other prior 40Bs, it was pretty restricted in terms of the amount that change could happen on the project. It always seemed as if the finances, other conditions dictated the outcome. I've always sort of felt like that the architecture was very low, on the order of things, but you sound like you're opening and hopefully in committee, you'll be able to, enlighten and inform and educate, other members so that then it could be applied, to the, in terms of the other members being able to see the project through your eyes, which would be incredible.
That's also essentially the issue, because everyone has a bad taste in their mouth, like 40, I don't want to see 40B, it's like bad buildings. And you need to elevate, the design of the
Right.
40B.
Right. Thank you.
Yes. Councillor Albright? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you guys hear me?
Oh, you're breaking
You're
up.
breaking up a bit.
I was just told that my internet is unstable. Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Okay, well, I will try to say, okay, thank you. So I looked at your designs and they definitely have the wow factor to them. So I appreciate that you're bringing that to the ZBA and you can advise our architects who come to the ZBA with a 40B project that you could do better than just plain architecture. I went to planning school and one of the things that we talked about a lot is that good design doesn't necessarily cost more than bad design. And advising people on how to really make Newton a better place with design would be a fabulous contribution that you could bring to the ZBA. So I want to thank you for being willing to serve and ask you to, I know that design, as in special permits, design is really not one of our features, but you can make comments from time to time about how architects could make a design that really works well for Newton and enhances our city rather than just kind of everyday kind of, it's a nothing, it's a lovely design, blah, blah, blah. So I hope you'll bring that clearly that that talent that you have with you to the ZBA. And I want to thank you so much for being willing to serve.
Thank you.
I just want to ask the same private question I asked Mr. Markowitz about public process. You want to say a word about public participation, your sense of it?
Could you repeat the question?
Yes, just your sense of public participation in the process of being, when people appear before you, both the applicant and interested parties, how you relate to those comments.
And I would look at it, throughout my career, I've been sitting on the other side of the table and with the community oppositions. And I also, in the past, I also led my community in East Boston to oppose the developer. And with my career, understand the process. And also I've been sitting on the other side. I think that the key is to be able to listen to facts. And because you can understand the community, these are real issues for them. It could affect their safety, it could affect their life, their poverties. And we need to understand these are real issues for people. However, we are not community advocates. And we need to look at things in the fair and with the right facts and regulations, and also to make the best judgment. And with that said, sometimes when we are on the other, as a designer, we meet with the community, they sometimes raise questions that we haven't thought about, we thought, oh, I'm glad you asked. And so it's actually meeting with community, be able to listen to them and enrich my design sensibility as well. And I think in this opportunity is also helping the community to design better community and also enrich my career as well and in my design sensibility. I don't know if I answered your question.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Councilor Malik.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, your background is very impressive. I'm curious, it sounds like, with the 40Bs that you worked on, were you the person who would go to the hearings in these towns?
I'm part of the team.
Part of the team, so you attended them. I'm wondering if you watched Newton ZBA 40B hearings, how they compare to other towns, because one of the issues that, we hear a lot about, that we can't really do anything about, is the residents who come to speak about their concerns. They feel like they're kind of the last priority. They have to, they're sitting through an hour and a half of presentations and initial questions, and then they get to speak, and they're limited to 3 minutes. And I know you'll be new and one member of basically 7, 5, whatever. But is there anything that other towns do differently to make people feel like they've at least got a more easy way to speak, even if it's not going to make any difference in the end?
Each town is different. And some of the towns, they don't even, they mute them, they don't even let them, like, yeah, I think it's some, the last one. And
You say they mute them so they don't get to speak at all?
yeah, in the past, you go to, before COVID, you go to City Hall, everyone is pretty contentious, everyone, especially for the architect, people with friends, like some community. But now it's like some of them, it's more organized. What I meant is, they would let you speak, they control the audio. And each town is different. And in some towns, there are more community outreach, they are a liaison, they would reach out to community and they orchestrate, they organize, they give you information ahead, so you hear some of them. And so I think it's, even though you let the community speak, maybe it doesn't represent the entire community, because people who have time to come to the meeting, and it's just minority of numbers. And I think having a better community outreach to reach out to more people, to get solicit more opinions, before just the meeting, people might not have time to attend the meetings, that might be a better, be a different approach.
Thank you. I should mention, there's docket items, the first one was 231-26, the second is 230-26. But any other members of the council? I'm not seeing someone online. Which ward are?
Ward one.
Ward one, Councilor Oliver is
Not here.
not here, so,
Susan's too. There's
Councilor Albright, you're the next number in line.
I will gladly nominate for approval, Mr. Ning, and I'll be the proxy for Ward one.
Thank you very much. Okay, then your appointment has been moved. All those in favor will say aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, that's unanimous, except for Councilor Oliver, obviously. Thank you very much. And you're welcome to go home, or you can stick around depending on your preference.
Okay, thank you.
And finally, but not least, Mr. Capasso, if you come up. This is item 229-26, appointing Dante Capasso of 421 Walker Street, Armadale, as an alternate member of the zoning board of appeals. So do you want to say a little bit about your background and why you're interested in serving?
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Hi, everyone. My name is Dante Capasso. My family is a family business in Newton, Capasso Realty. We're local property owners, managers, developers, and builders. I'm a licensed general contractor. We almost exclusively do business in Newton, a little bit in Waltham, but Newton's always been our home base for over 60 years. And we're very proud of that. I think I'll compliment especially my two other nominees tonight as the architect, the consultant, and CPA, and I'm a builder and developer too. So I think it'd be a nice mix. I'm excited to serve Newton again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions from the committee? Councilor Wright.
Yes, thank you for serving. And again, like you said, you have more real life experience in building and things like that. And I think the three nominees complement each other. I think that's a very nice job that the mayor did to get all of those coming together. So thank you.
You put together a project by yourself.
So, yeah, that's a great idea.
Councilor Good.
Yeah, thank you. As with all of you, thank you, because I think it's really critical that, and I do commend our mayor for having, figured out that touching each of these areas of expertise. We talk a lot on Berto, and I sort of see this as, essential. So I really sort of feel as if all of you guys together are really going to do a great job, in terms of being able to evaluate projects and ask the right questions. So again, thank you. I'm just very supportive of this idea of mixing it up, on the ZBA. And I've seen you quite a bit, in the sense of participating in local governance for quite a while. So this is wonderful. This is great.
And just ask the same question about your sense about public participation. You want to say your?
Sure. I really think it comes down to respect. You have to respect your neighbors, the people around you. Whenever I've done a development, I personally knocked on every door within a quarter mile. We're not always going to agree, but it's their home. It's the most personal thing. You need to respect their opinion. And I think just because they do or don't want something makes them bad or anything, you need to show people respect and hear what they have to say. And generally, when you do that, it just seems to be much easier, I find.
Okay. Councilor Albright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm really glad that we have someone with actual development experience, not the architect, which I love having an architect, but someone who's dealt with, let's build this building. Let's see how the people are going to deal with it. Let's work with the neighborhood to make it work. I'm glad that we have someone with that kind of experience on the ZBA. So I really thank you for being willing to serve. I think that's an important aspect of the project. Bringing that reality to when a developer says, I can't do this, or I can do this, but I would love to help you out, but I can't do this. You have the reality of how much things cost. So I'm so thankful that we have that experience on the ZBA. And I'm going to be supporting your candidacy.
Thank you.
So, anyone else? Councilor Block.
I was just gonna, I thought there was a moment for a motion and Mr. Capasso is also from Ward 4, so I'll wait till then.
Councilor
Thank you,
Block.
Chair. Mr. Capasso, nice to see you again.
Thank you.
You attended the last ZBA meeting. As a kind of witness, I suppose, to one of the proposals. And it was a zoning variance petition. And I asked former Councilor Markowitz this question, and I want to get your thoughts too. What do you think about the zoning variance standard that the state seems to be trying to make a little easier? And how do you think that played out in the meeting that you attended? And I ask that because apparently this was the first vote in the state of Massachusetts using this new standard, and it may still be the only vote that has been taken in the state of Massachusetts using this standard. So just give us your thoughts on kind of what you think is going on with this, quite apart from your testimony.
Yeah,
at
it's a
ZBA.
great question. And for, I guess, background, it was the building on Rumford Ave, excuse me, Riverview Ave, for the Walmart facility. And it's funny because I haven't been, I've never been in front of the ZBA in at least 10 years. I work for my family, and then my appointment is, notified I have business in front of it, but it was very unique. Perhaps it didn't lower the bar. It certainly moved it a place. I don't think we know where it's gonna go yet. So in that case, it worked out. It really just changes how and what can be considered for potential variances. And in that case, it wasn't housing, but it's very clear because I believe in all that text, it mentions housing there several times, but I think what Chris Markowitz said is exactly right. I think a lot is gonna have to unfold before we really know, but a lot different things can now be considered that wasn't before. In that case, it very much worked out for the applicant, which is us and Walmart, so.
Okay, thanks very much. Look forward to your survey.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we got everybody? All right, you're on.
Happy to make a motion to approve Mr. Capasso's nomination to the ZBA.
Wonderful, thank you. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it again. Thank you very much. You're welcome to stay or go home, whatever is your preference. You'll be over here again in City Hall.
Thank you.
Thank you for serving. Okay, and the next appointee is a reappointment, and I'd like to ask Mr. Cornelius if he'd be willing to come sit with us. As opposed to our prior appointees, Mr. Cornelius is willing to come back for return engagement, which
The mayor said I could not do so easily.
But just because I'm somewhat biased in favor of someone who's both a lawyer and a biker, I just wanted to say that this is.
I do combine the two. I do my tour of the agenda by bike most times, so welcome to join me sometime.
We'll tell him, never mind. I have chair of the bicycle subcommittee of the Environment Committee of the Boston Bar Association back 35 years ago. And we had, anyway, so you know what you're getting in for, yet you were willing to re-up. So do you want to say a little bit about what brings you to this role again?
Sure. My background, unlike the people who actually have real skills, I'm a lawyer by training. Back in law school now, a few decades ago, I was actually studying to get my law degree and a master's in short presentation. Come graduation from law school, I got a great offer from a firm and still a few credits shy of getting that master's degree. And then about 10 years ago, I was having a discussion with a neighbor who was on the historical commission about whether the historical commission should be ruling on a fence. I said, that would be very weird. And he disagreed and got into it. He was like, what are you talking about? I said, I actually studied preservation law. And so he wrote me in to join the historical commission way back when. And I have not found an exit yet, so.
I should note that you're also volunteering in election capacities too, so.
That's where I was before here. Be sure our election runs smoothly on the 1st of September. Everybody knows we have an election on September 1st.
a precious opportunity for us all. So questions from members of the committee? Councilor Wright.
I might be stealing Councilor Maliki's question. Well, the three of us come to a lot of your meetings.
Yes,
When we-
it's good to see you. The flat screen was.
One of the things that, your committee always complain about, there's all these tear downs coming in. You would like the city council to do more to reduce it. And that's something I'm looking at, but what are your ideas on how we can help reduce these tear downs?
Sure, I mean, the main incentive for something to get torn down in the city is because you can build something larger. Tearing down something and putting up something the same size. Probably does not make a whole lot of economic sense.
Generally not.
There we go. So what the issue comes into is you have these, the case in point is gonna be Oakdale Park. Right, the tradition, the original small homes are being torn down and something much larger is being built there. Because the zoning allows something much bigger to be there. I talked to a realtor offhand about this, and they said. Yeah, the lot goes for $900,000 or $1 million if you've already torn down the house. For the process there, that there's no value whatsoever to the building there, because you build something so much larger. So as we look at our zoning, as you go across the city. And where people are complaining about something being torn down, something bigger going up, it's because zoning allows something much bigger to go up. So extent something is upzoned, we're seeing, we see the challenges with that specifically. I mean, that's the city council saying it should get torn down. And I think, there was a process looking at our we spent a lot of time, a lot of heartache over the village centers. Before that, I believe there's some work happening to focus on the areas of the city where we want to have single family 2,000 houses. And try to have the zoning there match closer to what's actually been built. I think a lot of our zoning was put in place and things got built. Because that's just how it got built, not because the zoning restricted to it. And now where land in Newton is just so much more expensive now. 5-6 decades later. We want to max that out, so I think it would be great if city council and. We go and look at those areas and say, we should have revised zoning for these areas to match closer to what's actually there on the ground. To the extent that's what you want. Obviously, if it's something you want, something denser, zoning to be denser.
Thank you, Councilor Getz and then Councilor Albright.
Thank you for serving. I think it's always important to, because at this stage you have institutional knowledge. You've watched the historic commission evolve, over time. I sort of feel as if I attend quite a few of the meetings, and I sort of feel that there's a huge disparity, between what is allowed, especially with the VCOD on specific parcels, and then, in terms of, there's a conflict, between the goals of preservation. And I think that it is a difficult position for the Historic Commission to be in, because I don't think that the prerequisite work has been done in terms of identifying parts of the city that need to be preserved. One of the mandates, or one of the, because I went through the ordinance today in terms of historic preservation for the commission. And I sort of feel as if, but this is bandwidth, and this is more the interface of like whether or not the commission members even are capable of doing the preservation work. I think it needs to be like historic surveys and identifying specific areas and streets of the city that really merit preservation.
Yeah.
And I do think that I wish we could do this work. Yeah. I think in terms of the village centers, we need to identify the significant buildings, that identify the village, and I think this work needs to be done. Because I think that we're in this conflict. And so there is a problem, and it's something that we both in zoning and planning and historic need to work to, and this is a huge, big problem that we have, because again and again, we've got the competing interests. We have the real estate development and can be permitted on that lot, but yet the lack of understanding of what the historic value is of those parcels. Yeah. So I do think that it's not on you and it's not on the commission, but I really would like to see more members of the commission have the preservation background and expertise, so that then they can educate other members of the commission. But that's not, you're the leader, in the sense of being, the yeah. elected, head chair of the committee. But I do feel as if there's quite a lot of work, and I'd like you to speak to a little bit to this, you know,
Sure.
just because I sort of feel as if you're conflicted, I know. You know, but I also feel as if this is such an onslaught of demolition, that's, you know, I can't fathom being in that room every single month, because it's just so much demolition.
You used to be a regular attendee, you talk all the time, the state election thing is really held back on the participation.
It's a kettle auction for me, because it's like.
I'm here, I see Mary Lee's here, Mary Lee's always. On almost everything. Yeah, one of the successes I've certainly seen from the VCOD is the MRT, that
Correct.
allowing to preserve it and add on, I think has been wildly successful.
Correct.
In getting units, and actually moving stuff along, whereas I think it has not been a lot under the actual VCOD coming in. On its own, online yet, there's a couple projects in the work. They tend to be bigger scale, so we have some issues around sort of financing goes along with that, compared to other things.
Yeah.
And it's been hard to get qualified people. There's not a lot of people who live in the city who have the background preservation and want to do it. There's an issue, we've run into issues with architects. Because most of the architects that are interested in it work in small shops in the area. And I know there's one case, the State Ethics Commission said you just can't do it. Because basically your name is on the architectural firm, so your firm can never come before the commission while you're serving on the commission. Even recusal was not enough. So we've had some issues with that on the part.
Do you have any thoughts in terms of going forward? You know, for direction or for priorities for the historic district, you know, for the historical commission?
I don't have any particular priorities, you know, we did work with Councilor Baker and Councilor Albright redoing the landmark ordinance and the demolition delay ordinance several years ago. You know, one thing to think about that I brought up there and the city council talked about is what's the right range for the demolition delay to come into play. In terms of how long the delay should be and how far back it goes. You know, right now it's for anything more than 50 years old. Even lawyer math tells me that's 1976, which most of us would not hopefully think of it actually being historic. And so whether that's the right scope as well too. And that was discussed several years ago when it got revised, and we kept it at 50 years and we kept it as a 12-month delay.
Do you think, just one last question, do you think there's any benefit in terms of adding 6 months to each of the delays?
You know, there's some huge pros and cons to that. One, you know, there's the demolition delay serves really two purposes. One is for the most extraordinary ones, it gives you time to mobilize to take more extraordinary efforts. Where it's something that things should be eligible for landmarking, gives you time to do that process. The other is to create incentive to renovate as opposed to do the demolition, right? Partial demolitions you can deal with expeditiously. Full demolitions get slowed down. So there's the incentive aspect of it. The downside to it is, you know, you have an 18-month delay. That means there's a house sitting unused in the city, surrounded by construction fence, not being maintained, and not being home to a new family in Newton, and not being on the tax rolls for an extra 6 months as well too. So there's a balance there. The question is it going to create more of incentive? I think it might most likely would just reduce the sales price. Someone's finally selling their home and now the developer or the next person is gonna say, well, I can deal with the demolition delay, that's 6 extra months of carrying cost. I'm gonna give you X minus X now instead of some larger amount. And for most people, that's their retirement money right there. And that ends up taking some of that chunk away. But at the same point, we like preservation, we like doing it, so there's a tough balance there on stuff. On the preservation side, yeah, that's good, it's more likely to do more preservation, but there is negative impact to that as well.
That's why we get paid such a big.
You get more than I do.
Councilor Albright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Cornelius, I want to start by thanking you for being willing to do all the work. When I look at the agendas that you deal with at every meeting, I can't believe that you managed to work your way through those agendas. So it's an amazing amount of work for for no pay. So thank you for that. But my question really, your answers to the questions that have already been asked show that you have a real understanding of what's going on in Newton with development, and that is invaluable. But my question has to do with an interesting project that we just had. It was Brookside, 60 Brookside, which came before the commission, and you gave them a waiver of demolition because you liked their design, and you fit in with the neighborhood and so forth. And I frankly, I appreciated that, and I agreed with that. But that project had to come before the city council for a special permit, and it was denied because it required a supermajority. So, and you mentioned our zoning. So there are instances, I think.
Councilor Albright, and with all, I understand, we just want to try and get him through the process when we can talk about our zoning policy in more detail, but can you focus on?
Well,
Yeah, so
you're talking about the special permit versus historic preservation sort of back and forth, is that right, Susan?
yes,
Give Councilor Albright a chance to ask some questions.
This is along Albemarle.
We had an extensive discussion at the council about this, that's why I'd like to keep our conversation moving forward, so.
so let me see if I can ask you a question that has more to do with so you clearly, the Historic Commission had a sense for what would work on a site. And I've seen many meetings. I don't come to all the meetings, but I've seen in the ones where people ask for a waiver, I've seen the way you put a lot of energy and expertise into deciding what could work if a project, if the waiver was shortened and you can build X instead of Y, or you don't have to wait the full year. And I guess what I'm saying is, what helps you make those decisions? I mean, you knew what that project was going. It's not about that particular project. It's about any project. You know what is being proposed to you, and you know what's going to happen in the future to make a project happen. So what are the things that go into your decision making as a commission to give that kind of a waiver that allows a project to have the delay of a full year taken away? And how do you decide that?
Yeah, I mean, sort of one thing that's in my mind, I think many of the commission members' mind is it's a demolition delay. So if we just deny a waiver application, the applicant could just wait out the additional months and do whatever it is they want. So oftentimes, you know, I'm personally not always looking for the perfect, but good enough that this is better than what they could do otherwise to go along with that. They make an attempt to sort of mitigate the loss of the additional, mitigate the loss of the existing structure. Are they trying to take it into the context of the neighborhood and nearby houses? So it sort of fits into that general context. That goes a long way towards that. It's really difficult when you have sort of the sore thumb being proposed that doesn't quite fit in to the area. You know, we try to avoid taking into account sort of necessarily the number of units or that other aspect to go along with it, as long as it has sort of the architectural and historical features that would be appropriate for the structure.
Okay.
Councilor Maliki, I have, and then Councilor Farrell. Yeah,
Thank
but
you.
I know we got other people and other business to do, so I encourage people.
Yeah, thank you. Can I call you Doug?
You tell me that, it's fine. If you call me Douglas, I think I'm in trouble. Doug is fine.
Back your mom. Council Wright is correct. She did steal my main question, but I wonder if you can elaborate a little on what measures the city council could take in terms of starting with zoning. Would limiting FAR help? Would changing the FAR?
I'm gonna suggest
Yeah.
that you say that.
Right.
Longer.
You get some more coming up. I think it's the idea of more of a pattern zoning, that this is sort of the size of what we want in there. The issue is FAR works great to sort of keep the same size, if all the lots are the same size. We don't have a lot of that in Newton, so you end up, that the FAR ends up just being fairly imperfect. Because, you get a big lot, all of a sudden you get a huge house. Even though it's in a, it was a carefully crafted subdivision at some point in time, where most of the houses looked alike.
Yeah, so I agree FAR isn't sort of the entire solution, but it seems to be part of the solution along with things like setbacks. I wanted to ask you about, at multiple meetings, I've raised the issue of this house that somebody wants, developer bought and wants to tear down. It never hit the market. Nobody who wants to live in it ever got a chance to buy it. And you say, we can't consider that. I learned recently from a comment on a Boston Globe article about this Swampscott house, that Stockbridge actually has a provision that does that. In their words are, well, first, the planning board may, after public hearing, can conclude no reasonable likelihood that a person's gonna buy it and preserve it, or B, for at least 12 months, the owner has made continuing bona fide and reasonable efforts to locate a purchaser willing and reasonably able to preserve, rehabilitate, and restore the subject building, and that such efforts have been unsuccessful, and then we talk about appraisals and stuff like that. So it seems to me that one of the problems is that developers just factor in our 12-month delay into their business plan, and it's like next in the queue after they do the one that they're working on now. Whereas if it had to be on the MLS, be on Zillow, they could very well get offers. You mentioned that.
Councilor Malik, I'm gonna suggest that, again, that's a policy conversation
Yeah.
we're gonna get into. I'd prefer just to focus
I
on,
would like the applicant's thoughts on that. If
Is that article referring to a demolition delay ordinance?
Yeah, it's their demolition delay, yeah.
That sounds stricter than most things I've seen. I would defer to, if Jonah's still hanging out there, as to whether we can take into account who owns the property or where the process got to before it got there. I don't see that in the text of the ordinance.
Yeah, I can send you the Stockbridge ordinance.
there are alternative ways that some communities have done this, so I guess you work with the ordinance you're given, really.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, how can we make our ordinance better?
Yeah, and again, the downside is if you force this additional process, and I agree. If developers coming to do it, they take into account that I'm gonna have to have these carry costs during the demolition delay period. If you force some other additional process in there, again, I think that ends up being built into the developer's cost, and then ends up being less money going back to the original property owner.
I'm not sure that's necessarily.
Well,
true because-
let's not get into that. You've asked his opinion and he's given it. But I want to focus on, again, just getting a chance to have you talk about public participation. And we've asked everybody, but Ms. Gordon, Councilor Gordon is on, I see her hand up, so I want to let a chance to recognize her.
Thank you, Chair Baker. I wanted to follow up on something that Councilor Albright asked you, and I just wanted some clarification, Mr. Cornelius. You were saying that you take into account the project that's going to be done to replace a tear down and how you think that fits into the neighborhood. Did I hear that correctly, or I just wanted you to clarify what you were saying?
When they come for a waiver of the demolition delay.
Okay, so in neighborhoods where there's been a waiver, then the project that's gone up in its stead, you have looked at how you feel that that fits into the neighborhood in terms of its historical context and its architecture?
If they've come for a waiver, oftentimes the project will just wait out the demolition delay, and we never see what's proposed.
Right, but if you if you waive the delay, you are taking that into account. Is that correct? I just wanted to understand what you were saying.
Yeah, the standard around the waiver that we use is, does it mitigate the loss of the structure? Which is, does it take into account the architectural and historic features of the existing structure, and or the neighborhood nearby?
And do you feel, seeing what's going on in Newton, that that's working right now?
Again, a lot of projects wait out the delay.
Yes, I'm asking for the
We never
ones that,
see.
that you have waived. Have you followed up and looked at what's been built? And do you feel like that process is working in terms of we're getting what it is that we would like?
I can't say we're always getting what we like. You know, the ones that come through, I think the process works well for some cases and it doesn't work well for other cases.
Okay.
There's a lot of stuff personally that I don't particularly think looks great. But it's not always my decision.
Yeah, no, I just was trying to understand the whole process and sort of the outcomes that we're seeing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And, Councilor Farrell.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much for doing this, but I'm going to withdraw my request to speak. I think a lot of what I'm hearing and a lot of what needs to be considered is not your decision, so that you can be helpful in helping the council do its job of trying to determine what we want to see the city look like, and then say to you, this is what we want you to do. I happen to live in a ward that has many more sore thumbs than we ever hoped to see. And the demolition delay doesn't work, I don't believe. I see very few instances where this ends up with a landmark case. And I honestly don't know what, when you do a demolition delay, what you would really like to see happen. But I don't think that's the conversation right here, and I think it really behooves us as a council to sit down and seriously discuss what do we want and make the ordinance work for you. So thank you for being here and thank you for your participation.
And I'll just ask the last question I've asked the others, just about public participation, in the sense of the role of public participation in the historical commission.
Yeah, I see, you know, the other benefit I see to the demolition delay is most of the projects that come through us are as of right. So this is the only time that the neighborhood has a chance to express their opinion about what is happening for that particular project. And it's generally sort of 1 or 2 meetings to address that. I think I do a good job getting public comments into the entire process. Welcome. I tend to let people go longer than some other people might like to go with that, but again, this is sort of the one opportunity for it to happen. And I think, you know, certainly a lot of our applicants are often not represented by a lawyer in this, and it takes some handholding to get them through the process and understand what's happening and the procedure that goes through this.
Okay. Any other questions from anybody, from members of the council?
Question related to
Yeah.
public input. I appreciate that you bring some things to NHC that you say you're not sure about, but you want them to have a chance to look at it. But that's part of the process of you and Mr. Lewis, the staff person, sort of weeding out the things that you think are not of interest. And could you talk a little bit about how you decide? Because I mean, long ago, before I was even involved in anything but trees, it happened to the house across the street from me on Larkin Road. Suddenly it was being, you know, taking out the sewer and being demolished, and I didn't get any notice because it did not meet the threshold for whoever was running the NHC back then to bring it to commit, and it was, you know, staff approved. And it's true, when something comes to the NHC, it's people's opportunity to comment on what would otherwise be a by right project, but if it never comes to the NHC, they don't get that chance. So how do you decide which is gonna make the cut?
Right, there was a delegation by the full commission for the chair and a member of the staff to make a determination of application if it's clearly not historically significant. So the 2 standards on the ordinance is, does it have historical significance? And that's either by itself or in the context of the area it's in. And then once it passes that standard, then comes to the commission, we do the permanently preserved determination by vote there. So we do try to weed out some of the ones that seem very clear, nothing's gonna happen to it. It's certainly not there can be some differences of opinion over it, but we try to match that in that way. So, Andy. also try to just keep the agenda a little more manageable. We're up to 20 items next week, which is a long night.
I mean, I think some of those old garages, I can understand those, but and it was probably before your time when this house across the street from me. It was a 1940 something 50 cape in an intact street of capes and, you know.
Well, the point, I guess, being is that the chair has a role in specifically in assisting the commission shape its agenda to figure out which items are going to come before it and not which don't pass the initial screen. And so that's an important role that you have, and I think it's been articulated by the counselor from Ward 3.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions? If not, Mr. Cornelius, you're in West Newton.
Me.
Yeah. So,
I move forward, Ms. Cornelius for the Newton Historic Commission for approval.
for reappointment, okay.
Reappointment.
Thank you very much. All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. And I want to express my appreciation to all the candidates tonight and especially also to the members of the planning department staff and the public who have been willing to participate in the conversation as observers, because I think part of the value of these conversations is to educate us all about some of the issues that we're going to be addressing as a committee coming forward. So I think it's important to have a sense of a little bit of the people in the process as well as the institutional arrangements. So is that, I think we're ready to move on to our next item. So, thank you all for coming. Thank you.
It's your chance, come on.
Okay. Thank you very much. And so now we want to move to item 5726, which is request for discussion and ordinance amendments to dimensional controls aligning use and zoning. And this, I think, we have representative of the planning department here tonight, and I want to welcome all of you to please come to the table where you can be heard and seen.
These hands up to this. Yes.
This is just the agenda.
Yes, thank you.
So we're joined by Nora Colello and Amanda Wolf, both respectively head and deputy long range planners, and we're delighted to have you here to try and help us through this thicket one more time. And there's an extensive presentation which I appreciate the members of the department putting together, which is memorandum and a copy of their slide deck. But I've got that, but this is one where so much of the work that went into this was site specific. It would be helpful if you would still take us through it slowly but carefully, just because people will want to, I'm sure, especially counselors from the affected areas will want to know exactly what you're talking about. So, who's going to be the lead presenter?
We're sharing duties tonight.
Somebody's got to talk first.
Yes, it's Amanda's debut at ZAP, so she'll take the lead here, but I will,
I guess we should all applaud at your first speech.
I'll just help add some context for the work.
And we're also joined by the planning director. Do you want to sit at the table with us? Or
I'm okay, I'm actually just observing.
okay, thank you, Ms. Harry. But okay.
All right, so.
You just close the door. Oh, sorry.
So I do want to acknowledge, I obviously just got here, so I didn't have the opportunity to partake in the earlier conversations, but Nora and I've watched the recordings, so just bear with me, but by all means, interject with questions as we go. So as we've discussed, this is discussion of ordinance amendments to dimensional controls aligning use and zoning. We're going to begin with a background and scope of analysis. And then we're gonna go into the individual citywide parcels that we looked at outside of Nonantum to build on the conversation you've already had. And then lastly, Nora is gonna talk about some possible special permit criteria that would be helpful in conjunction.
Now, let me just mention, the clerk, we're gonna be seeing the slides so we can see them clearly, but if there's a question that comes up or somebody raises their hand, we let them know that we need to fill out a preliminary, that needs to be done. Okay.
Okay.
So starting with a little bit of background, I know at least for me, it feels like June was somehow ages ago and we're already in August. So at the June 22nd meeting, when this was last discussed, we focused really on the commercial areas in Nonantum where the zoning extends into predominantly residential areas. And where there was a majority of the parcels of this nature, and B, there's a kind of clear delineation between the commercial area and the more residential side streets. And from that meeting, we proposed three kind of options: rezoning individual parcels in that area, adding a special permit criteria regarding contextual massing, and then looking at additional zoning language changes. And the committee, after, I'm sure you all recall, great discussion, came to the consensus that we would be moving forward with examining the commercially zoned residential uses throughout the city as a next step, because we had looked at Nonantum, but there were parcels that were outside of Nonantum, they were just less clustered. So that's where we are today, and we have quite a few slides to go through on that front that Amanda will be presenting on. And then we also were directed by the committee to circle up with our counterparts in current planning and the law department to explore special permit criteria. So I will speak to that after the citywide parcel analysis. There we go. Oh, there we go, it's on a delay. So in order to look at all of the parcels in the city that are, so we use the same criteria that was used in Nonantum, so residential uses with 1 to 3 units that are in commercial zones. We first just did a basic observation. What are the uses in that neighborhood? What are the heights? What zoning districts are abutting those parcels that are residentially zoned right now? What are the age of the structures and the relation to the surrounding area, such as is there a high traffic corridor nearby? And then from that, we looked at recurring themes and patterns that came from that basic observation. These are ultimately all the criteria we looked at. That being said, if we went through all of these for every single parcel tonight, we could be here a long time. So we're gonna focus on a high level, things that were notable in each neighborhood, but just to give you a sense of what we looked at, first was context. So what are the primary uses in that area? Are there other distinct neighborhood features that impact things? Historic considerations, so is it in a historic district or is it a historic property, which would change the purview that it's under? Does it reflect historical patterns? So like the idea of the corner store that serves the neighborhood, you know, is there a reason maybe it was once zoned commercially, even though it's now residential? Distinction between zones, is there a clear boundary between commercial and residential, or is it more mixed? Does it have a buffering purpose? So in some cases, you'll see that maybe it's a commercial area that buffers a residential area from a highway or more intensive uses. Redevelopment potential, we're not here to analyze what will happen if it's redeveloped, but we will point out if we've already seen redevelopment under the current zoning requirements and what that looks like. And then what are the heights? One thing I will note is that our ordinance is a little unusual in that we recognize half stories in residential uses, but we don't recognize it in commercial uses. So we did base those commercial uses on observation. We didn't have like an exact number to pull on that. And then lastly, if it were to be rezoned,
what is the nearest residential district that it would naturally be moved into? This is
A lot of homework.
starting off with a big assignment. So we talked about state law changes a lot, and law will be providing much more detail on that. But one thing we did want to make sure is, do any of the current changes that were in the state budget bill outside sections impact this docket item? And ultimately, we believe that this would still be a valid means to move forward. The distinct detail about nonconformities to recognize under the new protections is it doesn't add protections for nonconforming uses. It just adds protections for nonconforming structures. That being said, while the new laws do allow nonconforming structures to go beyond the dimensional requirements, it does not allow it for height and setback. So any changes we make to this, the height requirements of the new district would apply. You wouldn't have any additional protections under the new law. Does that make sense? I know we're,
We're all gonna have to go to school.
Yeah, I think the kind of key takeaways, we were like, does any state law change make all this work moot? And I think the conclusion we came to is this is still a worthwhile endeavor. Any zoning change that we would make would be impactful.
much better said than I did. Yeah. So with that, we did want to just give a high level overview of if you were to rezone, what would those dimensional requirements be? So in all cases, the parcels are starting off in the business 1 or 2 districts. And we then pulled, okay, what are those abutting districts to these parcels? And that only came out to MR 1 through 3 and SR 1 through 3. So we didn't look at districts that weren't already abutting these parcels. The main takeaway with this is that, I just want to make sure I'm covering things. So the main takeaway is that rezoning to any of these districts that you see on the screen from the BU district would increase the by right story limit by a half story. That being said, from rezoning from BU1 to any of these districts, the story limit would remain unchanged. And if you were rezoning from BU2 to any of these districts, the special permit story limit decreases by 1. So in some cases, you're decreasing the special permit allowance, in other ways, you're actually increasing the by right allowance. That all being said, stories do not necessarily.
Just back up just to clarify that point. In a residential zone, you're 2.5 stories, right? Is that what the right band all?
Correct.
And you're talking about as of right, in a business 1, they're 2.5 stories in a business 1, right? Or is it?
2 stories.
2 stories only.
So the blue is by right.
Yes, sorry, I should have explained it that way. So the blue is by right, your green is the special permit.
Now I understand the color code better. Okay, so the basic point is that in a business 1, you're limited to 2 stories, but you can go up to 3 by special permit. In the residential, you're limited to 2.5, and you could go up to 3 by special permit. So there's a bigger increment in the business 1 by special permit, but not by right. And then in business 2, you're still at the 2-story, but you can go even higher. You can go up to a higher number by special permit. So that's the difference. That's true.
And roughly, how many BU1 percentage? Isn't it mostly like 80% BU1 and 20% BU2? There's a lot less BU2 than 1.
We have it labeled just off the top of my head as a guess, it's more BU1 than BU.
Oh, yeah, by a lot.
But yeah, the main takeaway here is that as we consider a rezoning, if the goal is to reduce the height allowance, we would just want to be careful because in some cases you could be increasing the by right allowance if you convert a business to a residential zone, which is a bit counterintuitive, which is why we wanted to make sure that was highlighted.
Somebody once said a side effect is a primary effect you hadn't anticipated.
Very wise, yeah.
Good point about it.
So related to that, we also wanted to address height limits because the way height is measured in our ordinance means that you can have a 2.5-story structure and a 3-story structure that look very similar from the outside. So this comparison changes it slightly. Overall, the same patterns, but you will see in our ordinance, we have more allowances in the residential districts if it's a sloped roof versus a flat roof. So that's what the flat lines versus the triangles are depicting. And the main takeaway with this is that rezoning to any of these residential districts from BU1 or BU2 increases the by right height by 6 to 12 feet.
Inches.
Feet.
Feet, okay.
And the
Right, yeah.
special permit height decreases or stays the same. In other words, rezoning to residential may not always decrease height.
So you're saying it increases it by 6 to 12 because of the slope?
Just in general.
Yeah, just in general.
But it doubles to quadruple the FAR going from BU to any of the residential. So the volume of the house on the lot greatly comes down when you zone it.
Yeah,
rezone it.
we'll get to that, but I think what you're trying to say is, let's take the dimensional controls that are not, that were still available to us under state law and say, what do those variables do, right?
This is just comparing the two zoning districts in terms of height as you consider rezonings.
Yeah.
That's the right point we can get to. Okay.
Yeah,
Very good point.
it's one of
That's
those
the
things
huge problem.
you could look at in many different aspects. But given that height was one of the conversations, we just wanted to start with that, and then we're happy to present other factors as well.
The point of the slide is that the sloping roof has an impact.
The point is that the by right potential, if you were to rezone from BU to residential, increases in height. Whereas the special permit potential decreases in height.
Sloped or flat, it increases.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, we just wanted to be technically accurate in terms of pointing out
In
this.
residential, you don't have the ability to get a height increase through special permit. That's one fixed point of our,
Yeah.
you do in the business.
And this is, again, high level, I think when we get to it, if there's interest in rezoning, we can talk about that specific case and get more into details. This is just high level takeaway that it's not necessarily straightforward in terms of business zone is greater in height and residential zone is less in height.
Could I ask a question?
Councilor, I have a question on the current slide.
I'm trying to understand the context. So what is it, Clinton?
I'm having trouble, you're breaking up. Can you hold your question and we'll come back to it?
Had that issue where that was, okay, it helps me understand, but I can wait.
Well, no, but we want to just respond to your question if we can understand it. Just say it again.
So the Clinton Road height, it was a BU zone and it ended up being a house. Do you remember, Nora or Amanda, how high that building was?
I don't know if Deputy Director Wewell's still on. I will just make the note that a significant issue with the Clinton height was the regrading, which the committee addressed last term in terms of changing the height measurement and the retaining wall allowances. The height measurement in that how we measure height starts from original grade or proposed, whichever is lower, which was not the case previously.
So it wasn't an issue of this that's displayed on this chart. It wasn't one of these issues.
I can pull it up, but this is Katie Weevil. I do recall the project did obtain special permit relief to exceed the maximum amount of stories. So I think it was 3 stories, and I just don't remember the corresponding height. I can try to locate that and follow up.
Okay, that would be useful as we understand all of this in the context. Thank you, Katie.
Okay, so, Ms. Wolf, carry on.
Yeah, one thing I will clarify with this, is that in this case, height limits are the same for by right and special permit for the MR 1 through 3 and the SR 1 through 3. That's why they're depicted in green, because there's no difference between the special permit and the by right. So, to just draw back to the last slide for a second, it looks very different when you look at it from a story perspective, but then when you look at it from the height limitations, it tells a slightly different story.
And I believe Director Fier on the height, it was 35.5 feet.
No, you're talking about Clinton.
Yes,
Okay.
which is under the 36, but they built up the lot quite a bit.
So now we're gonna go into the citywide parcel analysis, and again, this is residential uses that have 1 to 3 units in commercial districts. One thing I will also point out is height is obviously not the full story, it's also context. So the other thing we're looking at is, does commercial zoning make sense for that neighborhood? And so that's more what we're gonna look into for this section. Because we looked at so much criteria, we tried to simplify, mostly for our own brains, but also for yours, where we came up with a traffic light system. Where if it's a reason, if it's a reason that rezoning may be beneficial, we've used a green circle. If it's a reason to be cautious about rezoning, it's yellow. And then if it's a reason that rezoning may not be beneficial or maybe not necessary, it's in red. So we're gonna start in Newton Upper Falls and Woburn, which is Ward 5. So we have 2 parcels on Chestnut Street, just north of Boylston Street. To put it into context, this is the Boylston Street overpass, so where the bridge is. It's jumping ahead. Okay. So overall, this is a residential area. However, it does have a buffering purpose, and that even though these 2 parcels on the end are currently residential uses, if it were to become commercial, it wouldn't necessarily be an unnatural fit, just because most residential uses wouldn't want to be directly abutting the overpass anyway. I will say I should have started this with this, but none of the neighborhoods stuck out to us as needing rezoning the way Nonantum did. They didn't meet that same criteria of commercial zoning clearly extending into a residential use.
I'm gonna talk about each one.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll go Councilor Wright had her hand up and then Councilor Wright, yeah.
So this one, there's no other, business, lots right there. It's all residential. So I could see changing this to residential because there's no BU lots whatsoever. I mean, some of the other streets, they're busier streets or whatever, and like Annam Street, and you have a mix, but there's no mix here. It's all residential.
That's okay, there's a comment on, fair. Councilor Getz, again, we just wanna,
Yeah.
I wanna let
No,
him get
they-
through the slides and then come back to these.
These 2 parcels, I mean, the proximity to Route 9 would be difficult. But I was trying to identify these 2 parcels actually are not considered part of the historic district. All the rest of the parcels in this conversation are. So, these were the 2 that stood out in terms of, but you can see this 1295 is not, it's sold for $315,000, and it's, like the lot itself, I think is it's minutia. I mean, it's just incredibly tight, incredibly small. And it's, you know, of benefit in terms of, I would say, yes, it absolutely needs to be left as residential, these two parcels. But I don't see them evolving into commercial at any point because the proximity to the overpass and, you know, it's just a zone that is so car centric. You wouldn't even want to walk in this area. You know, it's just incredibly difficult. And with the Wellesley Office Park, this, and people literally do a zigzag underneath the overpass. It is so car centric. No one's walking anywhere near that, period.
So let me just say as a process matter, what I'd like to go through, but I'm hearing a comment from a ward counselor that this might be an appropriate area for consideration for rezoning. Is that your comment?
Well, right now, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
So let's just make a note of that and then go forward, because I want to get through each of the sites if we can, and then think about where we go from here. Okay.
And I'll add that one thing I do wanna double check, cause you mentioned that it's outside the historic district,
Yes,
our maps
yes,
show it inside, so we'll just double check though, it could be an error on our part. But that definitely affects the
Yeah,
reason,
those
so
are
I
the
wanna.
two, the only two in all of the parcels that you identified that I, you know, in my, you know, the assessor's database were not part of the district. So
Can I
this-
ask-
yeah.
Sorry, just a follow-up question. So if the committee, after all your discussion decides to, rezone this, I'd like to kind of explore which residential zone makes sense, because they each abut a different one. So would it just be the abutting residential zone? Would that be the preference, or?
Well, I was trying to figure out what they actually are right now.
In general, I think, yeah.
They're abutting MR1 and SR2.
Okay, so, okay, so you're, you know, suggesting that, I mean, all of, Chestnut on that zone is MR, correct? If I,
No,
So
on the east side of the road.
yeah.
On the right side, east side of the road
is MR,
And
and,
then the other side is SR.
yeah, but this lot is minutia, I mean, it's literally, like, a dot.
But I think that the
That little one?
Yeah.
If
I
it's
think
today,
that we need to give the department some general guidance. So I think the default is that if the abutting zone is
MR.
one MR or the abutting zone is SR, then it would make sense to extend it unless there's some positive reason not to. If you do the rezoning, I want to try and give them some marching orders as we go forward.
If I had to say, the one that's on the east side was MR, and the one on the west side was SR.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have more comments on this side? Okay. Carry on. Oh, yeah.
One clarification, did you do any historic research to figure out why these were originally zoned for you?
So I wasn't able to find that, I can definitely do more digging. I did find that the existing structures that you see are from 1950 and 1970. So compared to the neighborhood, they were redeveloped more recently. So it's possible at one point it was a commercial use. But I haven't found anything supporting that. It's not always easy to trace that, obviously, but I can definitely find out if that's something that.
And then across the street on the south side of Route 9, they're residential. So it's just kind of weird that they just, those two lots are a BU lot and that's it.
The city does have a lot of areas where you do have a residential area and then a small commercial corner. So it's possible at one point that that's what existed there. We
Corner
don't-
store and a gas station or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, exactly. So then we're gonna move further south down Chestnut Street, between Summer Street and Winter Street. And there's several parcels that, and Sullivan Avenue, we're looking all the way down. You'll see a mix of uses. And then when you actually look at the context of the area, it is a historic mixed-use village center. So you can see the different types of buildings on this street. We have everything from a gas station, which believe it or not is considered historic, and
to these mixed-use buildings up here, and then your traditional residential, single-family residence. So it's definitely more of a mixed-use area. And it is part of the historic district, so it has additional oversight as well.
So, just to be clear, where do your stoplights colors come in here?
So, for example, yellow, we said is a reason that maybe rezone with caution. So it is already mixed use with some ground floor commercial. If you make it entirely,
Having trouble seeing the colors, that's why I'm trying to.
It goes yellow, red, red, yellow in
Okay,
this one.
Thank you.
Yes.
apologies.
I just want to be clear on the image. Thank you. Excuse Councilor Wright.
So in general, like on Chestnut Street, and there are commercial uses on there, and it's kind of mixed use, I'm fine with kind of leaving it, just like Adams Street. And this area has a lot more protection because it's in the historic district, so it's not like they're just gonna be able to tear it down and put in whatever. So personally, in this area, I could see just leaving it.
Councilor Getz, your.
Yeah,
your word.
I'm on that page because I, attended quite a few of the Historic District Commission meetings. And I think it's 984 that's in this strip, came in as a much larger potential residential and was denied. And then was, brought down as a smaller project. So the purview of the commission is really strong, in the sense of, and I wouldn't want to lose the commercial in this zone, because it's from the 1830s, these buildings, and you just can see that brick building right there has such incredible charm, in the sense of the size of it, and then it's still a commercial building. So you want that, it feeds the whole street.
Your the consensus, just to be clear, and this one, leave it alone.
Keep it,
Okay.
keep it.
All right.
Yep.
Okay.
One thing I also want to mention, and I think Bruce goes right to your point, is this also is a nice transition zone. There's a large office development down here, and then you get to I-95. So it kind of transitions nicely from residential to mixed use to those heavier impact uses you wouldn't really want residential next to.
I'm going to compliment the department for giving us both the map and the pictures, because it gives you much more sense of things than just the map.
So now we're gonna move a little further south down Chestnut Street, where we have one parcel that is part of the historic district and one parcel that isn't. So I just want to flag that while we have it here. So overall, this is a continuation of that mixed use district, so very similar conditions. The other thing is we have this larger scale 3-story apartment complex. They have multiple buildings where the commercial massing kind of balances with that. The other thing is, even though 1076 Chestnut Street is outside the historic district, it does fall under the 50-year threshold, so it still would have additional review over there. It's also already has a accessory structure built behind it to make it multifamily, so we don't necessarily see a turnover of that. It's already being utilized fairly.
That's right.
So it's really hard to see, in the left little map there, the last lot to the right, go down a little bit, what exactly is that? That kind of seems like, oh, it's on the right side, so it's the whole thing on there, okay?
Yeah, so that second rectangle, is that accessory building behind that
Oh, no, it
house.
was the other one across.
Oh,
the
this
street.
one?
Go
Yeah.
back, go one more.
At the intersection of.
To the right, go to the right, go to the right, right, keep going, keep going.
That
Oh, right here,
there.
sorry.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah, so that is currently being used as commercial, so that's the other thing to consider, is a rezoning would isolate that from the other commercial uses.
Councilor Getz.
I'm pretty sure the proximity to the historic district here is impactful. I think if like the abutting, you have protections. I'm almost positive, but I'm not 100% on that. It's in the ordinance.
Well,
Okay, so the proximity of this is significant, in terms of just how close it is to the district. So I'm just explaining the weightedness of it. And if in fact, because some of these buildings, you don't have a picture of that one that Council Wright was pointing out, the 390, the red that's right there.
Yeah, over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of these properties have actually been redeveloped by special permit. 1092, former Councilor Yates's property was turned into attached dwellings. So it's like literally 2 more down, you know, it's like 4, but this was special permit. It's outside of the district, but I'm explaining to you that that actually has already turned over. Quite a few of these properties on Chestnut have turned over, they've been redeveloped.
Yeah, but they're keeping the business, I mean, those were MR zoning, they weren't using a BU zoning.
No, but what I'm
Yeah,
explaining
yeah.
to you is that there's probably not the likelihood of redevelopment is, you know, I just sort of, this one,
So again,
the
in terms of
1096.
resources, the conclusion is leave this alone.
Yeah, leave it alone.
I think so,
Okay.
I think so.
Again, appreciate.
Right, no, I'm just giving you the sense of this zone.
No,
you know.
We just want to make sure we give guidance to the.
Okay.
board.
Alright, so now we're gonna move into West Newton or Ward 3. We're looking at the intersection of River Street and Auburndale Ave. You have one mixed-use building and then these are all residential. So this gives you a glimpse of what this intersection looks like. It is kind of like the first example, it's this commercial island in a mostly residential area. That being said, a rezoning of this entire side where it is all being used as residential would entirely isolate this business, so that's something to consider in it. It is a highly visible corner compared to, that might be more conducive to business. But again, we're not, we're open to, you know, your thoughts on this, where you could go.
Councilor
either
Wright,
way.
this is your ward.
Yeah, so I think, this is the corner store. And it is being used as a corner store, it's not as residential, it's actually a dry cleaners. So keeping that, because it is a business use now, just business use. And then the lots on the south of that, I would rezone to residential. Now, the 2 lots, the 2 buildings to the far right there, they're pretty new. So those aren't gonna get torn down anytime soon, but the other ones are much older ones. And so if they would have been kind of outside of those other houses, you know, those condos that are due, if they took the BU zoning and made it residential, it would really stick out, being very, very different versus what's there. So I think all of it should get rezoned, but there's only a potential of the 2 lots to the left that really might have any near-term rezoning. I think the other ones were built like 5-8 years ago.
Yeah, the, over here are the 2 parcels I believe you're referring to.
Yeah.
This structure I think was from 2012 or something
Well,
around
that
that.
had a fire, and so they rebuilt it exactly
Okay.
the way it was. And then the other building there, but if it was zoned BU, again, BU zoning, when you use residential, is 2 to 4 times more the FAR, a lot more denser in a neighborhood that has residential houses. It's not like there's apartment buildings there.
So, Councilor Roach had a comment.
First a question, so just to be clear, if they get rezoned from business use to residential, they can't, they by right get to be a little taller, a special permit can be substantially taller, and the FAR goes down. So collectively, my development opportunity, if I'm understanding this and use small words and speak slowly, the development potential goes down.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things that concerns me, and this will be a theme I'll bring to these meetings going forward, is being explicit about where we stand. I have a position on this, but I want to talk about it more generally in process terms. Being explicit, this committee and then ultimately the council, about how we feel, sorry about that, even like it is, it's just water. How we feel about taking away that development potential from property owners, and I thought that, Mr. Cornelius was very eloquent about this and about the balance between what our zoning goals are and the price that particular property owners will pay for that. And we may, to kind of use the formulation from Councilor Baker, we may decide that's in the best interest of the city, but I would like us to be explicit and say, we think it's okay to take property value from people in order to pursue some of these other zoning goals. And just be explicit about that. So in this instance, would we be okay, you know, devaluing these properties in order to meet these other goals?
This is a contextual, those are two sitting in a sea of, you know, 1 and 2 and 3 family homes. So from a contextual point, it's gonna stay the same as what it is now versus putting something much more denser on that lot, 4 times more dense than what's already there.
Right, and what's already there is the zoning, the zoning that would allow them.
Oh, yeah, you would.
So in order to, you know, so the contextual goal, my point isn't to debate whether or not. I mean, we need to debate it, but my point here is to say. If we think context is important, and it may be, let's at least be explicit that someone will be paying the cost to. In terms of their property value, to achieve those contextual goals.
Let me just comment on that, because I think it's a sensitive point, an important one. My sense of the framing, however, is that the value of these properties is a function of what the zoning allows. There's nothing inherent here, and part of what we're wrestling with is what is the appropriate zoning arrangements. And there are some situations where we may change the zoning so someone has more opportunity than in the past. We did that with the village center districts, for example. They were much more limited. We gave more and more opportunity to develop there because we thought it was in the public interest. And I think the point is that anytime we make a change, there may be some impacts on potential value. But again, the question is, what is the community interest that we're trying to serve? And we're gonna have that debate regardless, I think.
Yeah, so two quick points on this. One is, I just want to be explicit about it, right? Zoning, special permits can be wealth creation or wealth destruction events, right? And when we do wealth creation, we do it with where it's a win-win, right? We say the village centers, we win if they're denser. It's a win-win because if you increase the assessed value of a property, there's more tax revenue, right? In the case of a downzoning, it is not a win-win, it is a win-loss because you're doing value destruction. So there is a difference between those two things. And yes, the public interest may be there, but somebody is paying for that public interest. So my interest isn't just being explicit about the conversation.
Well, I don't want to get into that conversation tonight, but I appreciate it. I just disagree with the framing. I have to say that. And I'll say that in a minute.
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
So these buildings are assessed on their value of the house itself and their finishes and things like that, and you get an assessed value on that. And generally, the houses are sold $100,000 or $200,000 over assessed value. Now, if you want to develop it with much denser, then someone may pay more, but the rest of the houses in the neighborhood are gonna be valued like this. So I don't think they bought this house because it's a BU zoning and I hit the jackpot, and when I'm ready to do it, I can sell it for 4 times more than all my neighbors.
But the fact is,
Well,
right now,
hang on, folks, we're gonna try and get through. Councilor Roach, I appreciate the point.
okay,
There's a choice that we make, and if there's a change in the zoning, that means you can build less than you could before. That affects the values. We've done that in this council time and again. The FAR that we adopted many years ago reduced the value of opportunities to build. We've taken the height that you could put on the property and we've said you could do less of that. So we do this all the time. The question is, what is appropriate in the context? I don't think we should ignore the impacts, but I don't think we also should be, I disagree with the term taking, because that has a constitutional effect.
well, I didn't use that term.
Okay, all right. So I just want to be clear about it. There is a change likely in the anticipated value that you might be able to sell it for if you had less opportunity, right? But that's what we're trying to wrestle our way through. And we've heard time and again from community residents about their concerns about what is the built environment of the city. So, but we will have that conversation, I'm sure. And simply because I know you will be part of it. So, let us.
Dog meat bone.
Let us stipulate that is a background music, and then we can go on for a while.
Fair
That's
enough.
right. Okay, all right, so I think. Yeah.
And the only other comment that I'd like to make is that we're looking at the zoning assignment as of today. And I actually, in terms, when we go further into this deck, I will speak to one specific Ward 8 example. How did this lot even get its designation? Because historically, there's fallacy, and historically, there was sort of a description of a specific lot that may not have necessarily met that use. So it evolved to this designation. So there needs to be, and we are at the parcel level right now, a deeper dive to appreciate maybe this was a corner store originally way back when. And so that's the kind of appreciation that we will have to get to in order to understand what it is. I actually sort of see this as a misalignment, that the zoning designation may or may not suit that parcel.
I'll just say as a historical matter, we had many years ago actually realigned some zoning in residential areas that were two family, where there's a whole pattern with single family, and we made the area single family just to make it consistent.
By the way, that was my first ever public comment. And I regret my comment to this day.
I won't ask him to replay it for us. Councilor Donovan, but I want to just get clarity about where we give direction to the planning department on this.
So maybe this will help us
Okay.
get there by not helping at all. I guess the reason for that is that I think I'm personally a little bit of two minds on this corner. It being sort of on the edge of Ward 3 and Ward 4, it's a corner that I pass a lot, and I know the Taylor is there, and that it does have quite a kind of lovely historic character in this intersection, and it reminds me a little bit of the intersection that's just down the road in River and Lexington, where there's sort of a bakery and a little restaurant, like there we used to be the old corner store joke shop and that kind of thing, and I, to the degree that we zone for what we want to see, I'm wondering what zoning allows that kind of character to be, to have the kind of neighborhood corner store, coffee shop, pastry shop character that seems, that this suggests to me was at some point the historic kind of nature of this character.
This is 2 blocks from Westminster Square, which has it, and we rezone our village centers or VCOT for what we wanna see, first floor retail and things like that. This is just 2 blocks away, kind of an outlier, I see it. And those other 2 buildings, they were very old buildings. I don't know what the age is in that, so they've been residentials for quite some time, 100, 150 years. Except for that one right there, which, I'm fine leaving as the corner store type of thing.
I wonder if the historic, as you said, Councilor, right, those 2 on the bottom, kind of up to the right, are fairly recently redeveloped, right?
Oh, no, so that one right there, it burned down and they rebuilt it exactly what it was like before. I was wishing they would rebuild it a little nicer looking, but it had a fire.
But I'm wondering if, like, I for whatever reason, and I didn't quite follow, our choices were kind of basically between the MR and and SR options tonight, but like. I'm wondering if for like that triple decker.
Yeah.
In that 2 to 4 Avondale Ave photo on the right, would an MRT designation for the, or zoning for that parcel
No,
produce a better preservation likelihood?
that's, I mean, that's totally out, the MRT is specifically for going from the village centers and going into the residential neighborhoods. This is 2 blocks away from the village center, and there'd be a single, lot, so no, not MRT. Now, that's another discussion somewhere else about what we can do to try to preserve these other homes, which we will have at a later date, but making that lot MRT, that's not the purpose of MRT.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
I think we're using MR and MRT interchangeably.
No.
No.
Okay, I just wanna make sure.
They mean MR1, 2, or 3.
Yeah, no, I
MRT is VCLD.
Brian would have corrected us.
So just to move us along here, because it's 9 o'clock and I want to get us out of here a decent hour. But Kayla's reminds me that we do have bedtimes, all of us, and the planning director has to drive an hour. So the conclusion here, as I hear it, is that this might make sense to return to residential use. Am I hearing that from the counselors involved?
On the south side of the street.
On the side, on the,
The one has a business there, like a corner store, and I would just keep it.
It's a dry cleaner, as soon as that dry cleaner closes,
Yeah.
it's not, it's gonna be 1100 Beacon.
So the next step would be a public hearing to rezone?
well, if
Just the
the,
south
if the
side.
conclusion is that these would be beneficially rezoned to residential rather than commercial, then ultimately when we get through this, we're gonna have a menu of specific sites
Just note it for now.
that just note it, but I'm not gonna assign a public hearing. We don't have a docket item for this yet. I mean, this is a longer term process. These buildings are not gonna be redeveloped tomorrow, but the point of this docket item initially was we have a misalignment in certain places, and what does that misalignment look like? And can we fix it or should we fix it? So at least this is as we've carried forward on this, as a candidate, seems appropriate for rezoning in some context. The others so far have not. Right?
No,
The second one I did,
Yeah.
beg your pardon, Councilor Taylor.
Can we jump to Oak Hill Park? So Councilor Farrell can participate.
Oh, sure, we can, again, the department has got a whole menu here, but we can. Okay, so what I'm gonna suggest is that. We had a clearer conclusion, I thought, in the first item to leave it alone.
No, the first item, we're gonna move them to residential.
That
The one that is north.
1295 Boylston and
Can you hold it up?
926, 928
I
Chestnut.
don't want to
were
confuse you all
rezoned.
by my poor summary, but I
Okay.
thought we had come to a clear resolution on.
The first one we rezoned, the next 2 or 3, we left.
Yes, yeah.
And now we're here.
Now we're here, okay, and so this one is kind of at least Councilor Damabed is not. Clear.
Still on the fence.
Still on the fence.
About the West Haven one.
Oh.
Okay, so let's just flag that it's not yet resolved, okay, that's all, I want to get through the high level.
Would you like to jump to Oak Hills?
Yes, I
That's
think,
just, yeah.
Councilor Kayla's.
Are you gonna stay the whole time?
You keep moving.
Well, if you're comfortable and Councilor Kayla is comfortable, then let's stay in order rather than.
That's
gonna be hard.
Thank you, I appreciate the consideration.
Your colleague in the ward looks happy.
Just quickly, I do wanna address a couple of things based on all the comments, and I know I'm not gonna catch everything, but one important consideration is multifamily always requires a special permit. Whereas single and 2 family has a by right option, so that's just something to keep out in the back of your minds. It's a different level of purview depending on what they wanna redevelop as. And then the other thing is, we're we obviously put a lot of information on these slides and we tried to cover it from different perspectives, knowing different counselors will value different things, you know, historic value versus existing heights. So if there's any follow-up questions or anything, we're happy to walk through those in more detail. So now we're gonna move over to the corner of Washington Street and Watertown Street, where you have this one parcel that is currently a single family house. It's right here. You can see it's Watertown, so and Washington, so it's very much a commercial area. The house itself is subject to NHC oversight because of its age. And it is kind of a transition area. It does help with the buffering. You can see the single residence zone in the dark yellow. That's SR2, I believe, or sorry, SR3 to the north. So it does kind of help buffer before you get to that busier area. On the other hand, is a clearly residential use currently.
I think.
This is your,
Yeah, I can see it in my bedroom window. So I think that lot should get rezoned as residential. It's been residential for 120 years. The corner lot, I mean, I leave it as such, but that kind of seems a little bit as an outlier because that whole street is all residential. I mean, you do have business on the south side of the street, but you could have just stopped at the gas station. So, but the one house has been there forever. The women that live there, they do a nice job, nice flowers, the whole bit, yeah. It should be.
Do it based on who's there, but
No.
I agree with you, this is, I like this as residential.
well, it's a nice house and it's sort of a shame to see it, you know. this-
Well, the thing is, the other house is, the next house on the corner there at 77 Davis, you know, they bought the house being next door to another house, and now if that turns down and comes up to a 4-story building, that really changed what, you know, they bought into. And so this is kind of, you know, leaving it as such. Now, the corner one can get higher and everything too, because that's business use. It was a special permit, but they could, you know, take that down and build that up.
But the consensus is that this is appropriate to rezone. Is that-
953.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I ask a clarifying
Yeah.
question? These are, it gets a little bit to Councilor Rich's point, but sort of more granular and personal. These are kind of big decisions about, like in this case, an individual family's life. Do we go and talk to them? Like, is there public engagement that occurs as part of this
Sure,
process?
yeah, public hearing, we know, to decide we want to do it, we're gonna have a public hearing.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And they'll be
Oh,
invited.
yeah.
Okay, wonderful, great.
And,
Happy hearing.
you know, I mean, no, let me put explicit about it. The public hearing formal notice is done through the conventional process of a public hearing.
Right.
But, you know, if a specific parcel is involved, my experience has been that people are affected by that are aware of it, and either the counselors make them aware, or they're aware indirectly. And they want to be heard, they come and talk
I
about it.
think we do, we do notice if a parcel's being rezoned to the
I would
current
think so.
property owner.
I would think so.
Yes.
Believe it or not, it is not state law. You don't have to issue notices to people if their property is being rezoned, reason being that it is a community decision, the future of whatever properties may be. So it's not a state law. You might have a local ordinance that requires it, but.
But I think that in the whole VCOD, we didn't notify every property owner what we were doing. It just would have been hugely impractical to do that. But in a situation where we're gonna have some specific, I'm sure we're gonna hear from folks.
Great. Happy to hear.
The other thing, you know, people buy their houses. When I bought my house, I didn't check my zoning. I had no idea what I could do afterward. You bought the house, this is what you have, this is what you think you can have. And then, you know, oh, it's zone BU and I can, you know, build 4 times more than what's on the lot right now. You know, most people don't know that.
Understood.
Anyway,
Thank you.
And the point of this story is that the possibility of doing something is not the assurance.
Right.
Right. Okay, are we clear that at least this is a candidate?
Yeah.
Right, all right.
Great, so now we're gonna look at another section of Washington Street, above where Cross Street and Parsons Street intersect. There are two parcels over here on Cross Street, as well as one that's on Washington Street and one in Parsons. So it's Washington Street, so it is a commercial area. It's well served by transit. The structures are predominantly, the residential ones that are there are older, so they are subject to the Historic Commission oversight. It does follow the strategy that was discussed in New Nantum of 1 to 2 parcels back from Washington Street is owned commercially. Redevelopment is possible due to the proximity to Washington Street. But you do have those limitations there by age, so, and just another set of considerations.
So this is, Councilor Wright, this is your beginning.
Yeah, so actually, the owner of the building with Trader Joe's. Oh, actually, this is not Parsons. Oh, he purchased the ones above that, let's see, who's gonna make it onto a parking lot? Where are those? I'm just looking, oh, the MR lots.
But this looks like it has a lot of red lights.
Red dots.
And a lot of what?
Red dots.
Red dots.
I know, 5759 Parson. Oh.
I mean,
Okay.
the thing we're wrestling with is we've got these are currently residential uses, right? In the.
Yeah.
And if they're rebuilt, they're gonna be a different kind of residential use as a BU. And if you want them to be business, they could be business, and somebody could put a, you know. So the question is, what is the preferred future in this particular location, you know?
I tend to would be residential. In reality, 5759 are condos, so that kind of is difficult. You have to buy about 3 people in order to redevelop that. And 53 Cross. Or 51 Cross, is that 59?
It's
53 and 49.
53.
Oh, 53, where's 50?
There's a table in the memo.
I'm at the assessor's database and there's no 53 on here.
It's the sort of second big building across 1105 Washington, and then right behind it, very skinny thing called 57.
I'm
Cross,
looking
and
at the
then
right
51
ones,
Cross.
looking at the wrong one, sorry about that. Yeah,
I mean, at least the argument that the Parsons, the 59 Parsons and the 2 Cross Street parcels are back into the neighborhood. The one 1077-79 Washington Street is at least on the corridor.
yeah,
And you know, if you're saying what would be the rational piece, it would be to maintain the residential for those residential and maybe leave that one. Is that?
yeah. I mean, 53. You do keep Washington Street, commercial.
I mean, 1077-79, what is that building? I can't see. Which one is that? Yeah. Is there, do we have a picture of that one?
I don't have it in the slides, I can pull it
No,
out.
no,
if
it's,
you would like.
It's well, it's just a house, but 1077, 1079, I mean, it's on Washington Street, anything on Washington Street, I think should stay business.
But is a sense, again, of a conversation that at least the parts that are back from Washington Street are appropriate for
Yeah.
making residential?
So the one parcel at 53 Cross.
There's 53 Cross and 49 Cross.
Yeah.
Those two, and then 57-59 Parsons.
Even though it's within
The
2.
road, sorry. You had a comment?
Somebody else doesn't know things. Nora?
I was just commenting that for Adam Street, we did within 2 parcels, we maintain the commercial, but if you'd prefer to.
Well, so
use a
right,
different framework here.
so right across the street from 5759 is an MR lot. And I think the lots right along Washington Street might be a little bit deeper than the ones along Adams Street. But right across the street here, this is an MR lot, which is closer to Washington Street. And this is one here is commercial. I mean, BU.
So
So you want to
for,
change that to BU? No. I wouldn't.
So,
for clarifying, because our understanding was it was 1 to 2 back from the main commercial corridor, not the street that it's on, so I'm just.
It depends how big the lots.
Oh, so I think this is, they wanted a different context for this one.
Yeah, because across the street, at least across the street from 5759 is an MR lot, which is even closer to Washington Street than that is.
so just to give guidance to the department, we're talking about potentially rezoning 49 Cross and 53 Cross and 57 and 59 Parsons, right? Leaving, correct?
I think it was just the
50.
cross and then.
Yeah, 49 and 53. I mean, I think 49 definitely should get rezoned because it's across the street from an MR lot. 53 is across the street from BU lot.
But they're abutting each other,
Yeah,
shouldn't they be?
okay.
Piece of this is that 53 looks like it's currently a 3-family. So it's very deceptive in terms of it, and it's from the era of it is, it's an 1890s house, so it's been,
Okay.
you know, that.
Yeah, 1890s, yeah.
For-
Particularly
Yeah.
a historic condition right
Yeah.
now.
No, it doesn't look like a historic.
Doesn't
Yeah,
look
no,
like
that's what I'm
it.
saying,
Yeah.
a historic.
Yeah.
All right, so just to move things along, 49 and 53 rezone.
Yeah.
Okay, 57, 59 Parsons rezone.
Yeah.
And leave 1077, 79 Washington Street commercial.
And what I was gonna say,
Hmm?
Councilor Baker, was I disagree only in that, especially in that they abut the Trader Joe's lot. And behind it is the Trader Joe's parking lot. And my suspicion is, given the state of the Trader Joe's, that there will be an opportunity there that is large enough to consider buying out. And so I think this is a potentially commercial opportunity. And so
So-
to foreclose that by making it residential now, when it'll have no impact, I would just leave it.
Are you talking about Cross?
Cross.
So I'll tell you right now, the owner of the building of Trader Joe's has bought out north of that 4143. And the last I heard, and he would have to go, I think, for a special permit. But he was taking, he already subdivided the lot and he's gonna take. He was gonna tear down the house. He got a lot of pushback not to, so he's gonna take the backyard and use it as part of the parking lot. I'm surprised they haven't gone through this. And then he was gonna do the same with 49. And I don't know if he was in negotiations with 53. But to make it a bigger parking lot and make an exit right out there for Trader Joe's. So that's happening right now, but I mean, he was in the process of, and he's working with Bookbinder to make 4143 and use it, which is right now, an MR lot, I think, yep. And they're going through to make it part of the parking lot.
So, but again, the question is, what is our, I think we're pretty clear that 57, 59 Parsons really ought to be on a candidate list. There's at least a question about 49, 40, and 53 now.
No, 57, I would say that's part of 1105, so that's all stay as BU, because they're on Washington Street.
Yeah, 1077, 79, leave that alone, but I'm just talking about, we give the guidance to the, so, there's at least a question about what's appropriate for 49 and 53.
Yeah.
All right, so at least we've got one candidate rezoning and one question.
And Parsons rezone?
Yeah,
Yeah,
57,
partially.
59, yeah,
To,
MR. It's across the street from MR already, and it's the whole street.
yeah,
The cross street, the two cross street parcels are uncertain yet.
that makes sense.
Okay, I mean, all right, we clear? I just want to move forward if we can. We can come back to anything if we leave a lot more time. And again, the hours ticking away at us. Okay. So next one. Arbordale.
Okay. Ward 4. We are looking at this block between Palm Ave and Auburn Street. You'll notice what's really unusual about this parcel doesn't have the greatest access to anything right now.
It is a fascinating spot.
So it is commercial mixed-use area with some multifamily. You can see that this view right here is the only angle you can actually see that building. Otherwise it's blocked from the other directions. It does meet the 50-year threshold, so it would be subject to that oversight, but it is kind of in this transition zone where it could fall either way.
Can I just say one thing about the 50-year oversight? All it is a speed bump. They can still tear it down. They
Yeah.
laid it out, they can still tear it down.
Yep.
But so, this is Ward 4.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just met with the family that owns the house just next to them that has it's a 1890s house, an old barn. And so the way that you access this building is that white street narrow street that you can see cut through the block, which is a sort of technically public but doesn't feel like it little street. This I don't know, I'm very torn about a lot of these. I'm like inclined to leave well enough alone in a lot of cases,
Well,
but
the question we worry about is that if they are repurchased and sold and made into something because of their business zone much bigger, it would be much more out of context with what's there. That's the Clinton Street.
The special permit is granted.
And that's, yeah,
Even an opportunity to make it stay residential.
given the context of this block, as you can see, I don't necessarily know that it should stay residential.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a nice old house, but
so I would suggest that this one maybe is a candidate for rezoning. Is that fair?
284, you think? It's just the one?
Yeah.
Yeah, we kind of disagree.
Yeah,
Only
I think.
it's so.
Turn this
close.
into a commercial right behind
Well,
residential.
It's bizarre.
well, but the whole block on the other side of it is also all commercial.
And
The anomalous character of this block is actually these couple of residential parcels along Melrose.
This could offer a lot of opportunity for a street facing business to have storage or something, right?
Not at that
So-
particular in-home thing, is it?
It would have to be purchased to have like a front facade on a
Right.
major street. It would have to be purchased alongside a parcel that actually faces onto
Right.
onto a major street. And then you could have, it could be, yeah, I
That's what I
mean,
was thinking.
yeah, storage, parking.
But for this purpose, it's a residential, it'd be nice to keep it that way, in a sense. Right? I mean,
I think so, but
well, that's what
I actually
we're
have
trying
never
to,
seen
we're
that.
trying to get candidate properties for rezoning. We may not do any of them ultimately, but the department's gone through a good deal of effort to give us some clarity about the context for these. So I would like to at least get a preliminary call on this one.
Yeah, this one's kind of odd because it's budding in MR, it's right next.
on one
door,
side,
On one side.
and the
then-
other three sides are BQ.
Yeah,
EU and
EU.
BC two.
Yeah,
Just
Yeah. So it's right there.
and it's surrounded by the middle of the block that is BU is also parking. It's a combo of privately and publicly owned parking,
Yeah, but it's not always gonna stay parking. I mean, there's talk
inshallah.
about of housing there.
So where are we, folks? I mean, that's it.
Raise a hand.
This is tough.
Who wants to change
This,
284? That, we're only looking at 284. Who wants that to change to residential?
No, it's already residential, right?
Well,
No,
it's
BU.
BU.
but it's BU1. That's its
BU1.
designation.
You want to use.
Yeah. And then it's, it's budding, it's right next to VC two. It's adjoining, and then it's MR two.
I'm
I
going
think
to
so.
pivot as well.
I think so.
All right, there you
all
go.
right, okay, consensus. I don't have a dog in this one.
It's a tough call, but I.
All right, this is your ward, so it's, and when in doubt, I give presumption to the ward counselor who knows what he's talking
I will
about.
say, I think because that one's dependent on likely combining with another parcel.
Yeah, it's not,
rezoning might
it's,
not be.
So the
the,
person who owns 284 owns the BU lot that's along Melrose Ave, right up there. So they own both of those.
so it's not worth it. I don't wanna go, I don't wanna take us down the track was not gonna be productive. Okay. All right, go to the next one.
So now we're gonna look at Newton Center, which includes Four Corners and Newton Highlands, so wards 6 and 8. Starting with the Four Corners, so right up the street where Whole Foods is. We have some parcels down here on Carthay Circle and then up here towards Brentwood Ave. So, so this is a largely commercial area. And it is intersected by the two aqueducts, so, development is somewhat limited, particularly of that one parcel down there. And it does have a nice buffering purpose between the residential and the more heavier uses as you go further down. And there also is a very clear delineation. So once you get to Brentwood Ave, you see it right here, it quickly transitions to residential.
Can you blow up the map that shows the different zoning, the one in the bottom left corner? Okay, so we're talking about OB up there too.
There, here, and here. So this is basically the back of the Whole Foods parking lot, and because you have those restrictions.
just do a land use?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a special permit.
Yeah, and then up here, you do have this commercial corner and then the residential kind of wraps around it, but otherwise it is a commercial corridor. Here, I will say these parcels were all redeveloped within the last,
That's Carthay, I would leave those.
yeah, so,
So what
So
about-
on the south side of Beacon, nothing's gonna change because those are all brand new or going to be brand new. The two Brentwood lots rear but the substantial, well, not substantial, but the commercial buildings, one of which is the Minion, the other which is Steve
Siegel?
Steve Siegel's engineering firm. And then the one that's at the corner, my eyes are not great, but is it 542 or something? Anyway, the one that's at the corner of Brentwood and Walnut is
It's an office building.
it's kind of like residential presenting office building.
Yeah, 846.
I would say that there's not a whole lot to be gained by changing any of these.
This is,
6.
so.
Catholic Gordon is on as well.
Oh, yeah, Counselor Gordon, do you have any?
Oh, yeah, she has her hand up.
Yeah, this is your ward.
Isn't the point of rezoning it is so that we don't get gigantic
Yeah,
houses?
the point is that if you don't rezone it, someone could take a business zone parcel, make a very large Clinton Street scale building right next to a residential zone. That's why we've been going through this, not because it can't be a commercial use in some context, but if it's not clearly commercially beneficial, like it's on a main corridor, which we've talked about as a distinguishing feature, like it's on Adam Street and has a commercial value, as a commercial use. If it's really going to be turned in, if it's a residential use now and could become a much bigger residential use as a right, then it makes sense to rezone it. So we're
Correct.
really trying to make the call on where, in fact, there is an anomaly, or at least concern that our current zoning is going to potentially change that into a very different outcome.
So that was my understanding, in which case I do think these should be zoned as residential and not left as business.
Yeah, and if you rezone it as residential, then it's not gonna be used for business, but you may not have that opportunity much anyway. So the question is just to clear these out and move along. The Carthay Circle properties, what about those? Leave them?
Yeah.
All right, no.
I'm sorry, leave them, when you say leave them, are you saying leave them as business use or
Leave them as business, they could be converted to residential, but the point is they've been redeveloped recently. The risk is low, the question is it worth the trouble?
Okay,
Those are
residential. I would, the rest of that circle is residential.
Yeah.
Why not?
yeah, see, I would say, why don't we make it residential? Since It is
I
residential.
just want to get a clarity here on my committee, yeah.
No, the only thought that I have is that, and that's was when we were discussing, Beacon, I looked to the zoning that was presented when we were doing the BCOD. These parcels were not part of the BCOD.
Mhm.
They were maintained, you can see the map right here, the two on Carthay Circle were not part, but right on Beacon Street, that's all priority street.
Yeah, so
So-
899 Walnut would stay business, and then 57 and 911 Carthay Circle should be rezoned.
Residential.
Yeah, and right next
Okay.
door, it's MR1.
So-
And I'll say this about.
Now, hang on, wait a minute, I gotta recognize people, otherwise we're gonna get a little disorderly, so. Come on up front where we can see you, that I can, you can raise your hand and I can.
Yeah, it's all this come here.
That's fine.
So my concern about the destruction of value doesn't apply on Carthay Circle because they picked a dog in this fight. They picked to be residential relatively recently, as has 1062 Beacon. So those three lots, I would not object to changing those to residential.
Okay.
Because they're not looking to redevelop that anytime. They're not looking at that as value or wealth.
What was the third one? 10?
The 1062.
Okay, 10/6.
And the two Carthay Circle.
So the area south of
South.
Beacon would be candidates for rezoning. Okay, right?
Councilor Gordon has her.
Councilor Gordon? Can we put
No,
Councilor
I-
Gordon's picture up so you can, she's not hidden behind the map? There she is.
I don't disagree with what Councilor Roach just said, if we're just talking about Brentwood and Carthay. Is that correct?
No, right now it's just talking about Beacon and Carthay.
Okay,
Now, let's go north and pick up the three parcels up, farther up. What, again, Ward 6, Councilor Gordon, do you have a preference? This is
So
your,
this is 850, 846 Walnut Street, and then Brentwood, 5860 and 54.
so, well, okay, so if you're looking at the 858 Walnut and the 860 to 862, those are businesses right now.
Yeah.
And if they wanted to convert those to residential, that would be special permit, wouldn't it?
So
Yes.
can I clarify, the photos are to give you context of the street, 858 Walnut and 860 Walnut are not part of the.
Go one slide.
Yeah.
I think that might be helpful. So it's not the corner where the business is.
Right.
The three that wrap around that.
we're talking about the wraparound parcels.
At the end, at Brentwood and Walnut.
Oh, yeah.
So at least, there's an argument that 850 Walnut Street is on the major you know, if it got redeveloped as a residential, a big residential, it's on a major street. But the other two parcels are on minor streets and are part of a more residential area. And it would seem to me to make sense to take those and make those consistent. But that's just this is not my ward, so I want to.
Well, I agree with if there's residential right there and further down, I mean, there's a real estate agent right next door to that, but they're in a house. So I do think they should be rezoned to residential, not far away from the street, from the main shopping area.
Well, move us along, but any other comment on this?
So you're saying, Counselor Baker, the one on Walnut, 860, I think that is? That
46.
that one, right, that she's pointing out would be rezoned.
No, it would still the same.
It would stay the same.
Existing Walnut would stay the same. Right now, it's residential, it's commercial, but it could be a business rather. It's business, but could be turned into a large commercial, but because it's on Walnut Street, the exposure there of that is not a big problem.
Oh, I see, current.
Okay.
But the two lines.
But the two above it,
Yes.
okay. All right, are we agreed on that? Okay, so let's go with the next one.
58, 60, and 50.
Okay.
We're nearing the end, I promise. All right.
Hard to believe.
So now we're gonna look at Langley Road. You see, it's kind of a mix of parcels, scattered throughout this area. But when you actually look at the context, so it is a commercial area, but it's also,
It's a village center.
yeah, it's significantly sized multifamily. It's not, 2 or 3 family. These are large apartment buildings, so something to consider. The other thing is these 2 parcels up here are quite small, so you probably would see if those were to turn over, it would be some sort of larger combining of lots, most likely, not necessarily in itself.
I know this area a little bit because it's closer to the East Newton section. Where I live. But the
Said nobody ever. I've never heard that expression. You haven't heard East Newton? It's like frying 4 from Chestnut Hill. No, sir.
No, the former city clerk used to say that I was a counselor from East Newton.
We'll make sure to rename the slides for this time.
Anyway, but the only parcel that's sort of a bit of an inholding is 13 Jackson. I just wondered about that. But the others are really don't strike me as the kind of preservation opportunity.
No. I mean, all of this is Thompsonville. It's a village center, so it should stay the VU.
Yes.
13,
But are they all, they're all being used as a lot of residential. It should stay to be.
But 416, 418 is in the middle of redevelopment.
Yeah, something's going on there. Anyway.
oh yeah. There's 6 condos, 2 something million each, sold the land for 1.2 million.
But let's just see, is there anybody who wants to do anything different here? Because if not, I'm gonna move us.
I agree with not doing anything.
And 13 is an outlier anyways, amongst all the BU. I would just say that.
So we're all gonna roll over on this. I was ready to dig in my heels.
It's
I'm disappointed. Let's stand up to this.
You were prepared to go to battle and nobody wants to play.
Such a disappointment. Let's go back to East Newton, Chestnut Hill.
Yeah, I know. All right, okay, we want to move on, all right? Nothing happens we're not doing anything in Thompsonville, all right? Okay.
Okay, now we're looking at Oak Hill Park. So this is one where you have this commercial zone in the middle of a residential area. But the interesting thing to point out here is when you actually look at the uses, if you remember, we're only pulling lots that were with 1 to 3 units. The only commercial use in this entire block is a little function hall in the corner. So just something we want to point out.
The other thing I wanna highlight is one of these parcels, 10 to 12 Hanson Road, recently went through a special permit. Being developed under the BU zoning. And then interestingly, when you look at Hanson Road and the surrounding neighborhood where it is in the SR3 zoning. We're also seeing redevelopment where it is quite significant massing. To what's been done across the street, so.
But I
Interesting
don't think
scenario.
it's quite the same massing, because of the BU zone, you can have twice as much massing, and it was a lot more, and it was kinda, it had a bit of problem going through the special.
That's the
permit.
Hanson Road is big.
Yeah.
So, Counselor Farrell,
Oh, that's-
you
yeah,
wanna
this
come
is-
to the table on this one, cause this is,
Oh, no, that's wrong.
do you have any views on this?
I don't know what the difference is with 55, which is at the end, the.
Well, you're talking,
On those three, I thought all four of those were residential.
well, this is,
So,
we're
so the
talking,
big one,
Huh?
the big one, 50,
Right,
right, so
Yeah, so
that's
these,
BU, that's why they can build so much.
what we're, again, trying to protect against is someone who takes and builds a very large residential structure
right,
as opposed to.
You got
the current
55.
residential zone. And so if you're concerned about that and it's not really, this is not a commercial corridor, this would be candidates for rezoning.
you know, this entire building. Was at one point. The only commercial property in Ward 8. It was the original Oakland Marketplace. And then they cut it in half and the right portion to the top of the screen is now residential. But there are some commercial properties in there. There's a pizza place and a laundromat.
At 6:55?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Six
which we
fifty-five,
can see in this
Yeah.
lower part of the picture,
yeah,
that's commercial.
655 I wouldn't change. I would leave that.
No,
And then the corner property here. Is the Schumann Center, which is a nonprofit organization. Run by the Oakland Park residents.
no, we're not worried about it. It's just the three.
The three up there, I think
It's
they should be
these,
residential.
yeah,
Yeah.
these should be residential.
Okay, so
Just don't know why
those
this is
are,
not.
This
Not
is,
as part of this.
yeah, Councilor Roach,
Part of
just let me,
the-
it's not part
So what do you think,
hang
Mike?
on a second, just let me make sure I get everybody. I got three people wanting to talk, but I'm gonna recognize, Councilor Gordon first, because her hand is up and online, and I always miss people online, so.
Thank you, Chair Baker. I just wanted to say that I met with the residents in this neighborhood, and they were extremely upset about what was built there and how big it was in relation to the houses in the neighborhood. So I just want to say, I think it would behoove us to change those to residential. And I think the neighborhood would thank us. They were beside themselves.
All right.
Those should be residential.
Okay, let me hear from others, so just Councilor Getz, and then I go to Councilor Rowe.
In 2022, 55 Palella was actually a special permit. And I went in and sort of, here's the original map for Oak Hill Park. And they were all designated as residential lots. And then what ended up happening was like in the so then it changed and it went into our R2 district residential lots. So those on Hanson, those 4 lots were all residential. And then in the 1950s, they were designated as BU1 lots. All right, so I always felt that these were erroneously labeled BU1 lots. And it's substantiated by, what happened historically. If you look at the progression, you look at the original Oak Hill map, and then you look at the subsequent maps, here's the subsequent, where it's the neighborhood general designation, and then the R2 designation. In the 1950s, you understand, at some point, this got converted to BU1 lots, and they actually are, I consider a miszoning.
Okay.
Okay.
Consider what?
A miszoning. They should not have, they should never have received the BU designation.
I think that's probably true.
Okay, so Councilor Roach.
I just, I'm in this neighborhood a lot, and I think that given the commercial and given the scale of the building in the north corner, that those three properties would be fine for larger scaled multifamily, smaller units, not the condos. And that unfortunately, in our zoning, the best way to do multifamily, apartment-like buildings is special permit and BU, so I would leave them.
So
I
I would switch it. I mean, right now, they could have done that with a special permit, because they were BU and they could have made apartment buildings there and they didn't. So they're just gonna make really, really big
Right.
2 condos. And so I would change this to residential.
I would too.
One thing I'll also point out, this is where half stories being recognized in residential but not business zones has come into play. So the Hanson Road one, that additional, what looks like a 3rd story, this is considered a 2-story building under the BU zoning because we don't qualify half stories, so it's just another helpful perspective to look at it.
So let's just get clarity, Councilor Donovan.
I am kind of inclined for basically entirely different reasons than any of them that have been said, but just sort of like on the basis of mid-century planning, that, whole blocks are typically zoned as one zone in these kinds of mid-century development projects, and so I'm inclined to preserve the zoning integrity of this block and not kind of change it, recognizing that has repercussions down the road, but yeah, I'm inclined towards keeping it as is.
This entire neighborhood was created in 1949.
Yeah,
There was nothing, there was a sand pit.
yeah,
And they were all small 1,000-square-foot homes on slabs. And there may be 10 or 11 of them left. So I mean, when they planned this in 1949, it was all for 412 small homes for returning veterans. And there was a commercial center. They built a high school, they had a playground. It was a real interesting community. The houses faced each other on paths, not roads that you couldn't drive on. Anyhow, I'm sure that got changed when they changed the big residence. They knocked down half of that commercial center and built that big apartment building. And that's probably when this all became BU, whatever it is. But I would certainly keep those 3 as residential.
So let me get a
Change them to residential.
Change to residential.
sense of the committee on this, because to be clear. How many folks are in favor of making this, the 3?
4.
The 4?
I don't know why the 4th one's not
Just
included.
develop, right?
You know why?
The 55 Kaloa, the one that's on the corner
Yeah.
is special permitted.
Is what?
The one on the corner, so there's
I think
3.
there's only 3.
Yeah.
And the one on the corner.
There's 4, there's 4 lots there.
Yeah, no, but the ones that are under, right now, the 3 that are left on Hanson are the ones with consider. Because
Why not the 4th one?
one on the corner has already been redeveloped.
So,
It's
so what? I mean, you wanna be consistent.
Yeah.
Just
What is
do
its
that.
designation now?
Yeah, so I can provide some clarity on this. The way the parcel list was extrapolated from the assessor's records was residential 1 to 3 units. There's certain exceptions built into that, and this is a housing authority property on the corner.
Yeah.
So that's why it didn't get put into that extrapolation.
So I think that parcel then, but let me get clear, then we have 3 parcels then?
3 parcels.
Okay.
What's the addresses?
Which ones are we talking about?
So-
The one on Hanson, right?
18 Hanson, 10 to 12 Hanson, and 633 Sawmill Brook.
So 55, that's not housing authority.
No, but that's the one it's facing Columbia.
Well,
And that's the one that's the special permit.
I know, but it
Okay.
didn't get rezoned and
Well, right.
47 to
Hang
40.
hang on, let's, excuse me a second, but we just gotta get clarity on what we, at least most of the committee agrees on. So we're talking about the three, 18, 10 to 12, and 633.
Yes.
Our committee sentiment, anybody dissent? One, okay, but I think we moved for those. Is there a fourth one now that you want?
55 on the corner there.
And what is that? What did you say about the housing authority?
That's the
So
one next to it.
they own at least one of those parcels
Right
over
there,
there.
maybe
The
the
little
little one.
The little one that's.
I just looked it up. That's the housing authority.
Right.
The one on the corner?
No, 47, 49, the little one in between, the big apartment building in the corner.
Oh.
That's the
I
housing
think-
authority.
There was another, I can look as to why this one was excluded, but it would have had to do with how it's coded in the assessor's database.
Okay, so if
yeah.
possible, I think we'd wanna make that one residential as well.
Right.
Yeah. And they just redeveloped it, but yes, I think it should go to residential.
Right, so now we're back to 55 Colella, because that was the one. that
We
was-
just said.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the other one,
No.
the.
Down with it.
Thank you.
Oh,
Hang on.
I guess,
And I can't pull up and.
I'm just a little bit worried that at this stage, after having done 8 or 9 rounds of these. Now we're saying, oh, even though it was redeveloped recently, we're actually going to consider changing it, like if that had been something that had excluded. Parcels from reconsideration up till this point,
I think it's always been considered, and we just haven't found. the
but we keep
opportunity.
just saying, oh, it's just been redeveloped, so we'll just not do it.
No, we still didn't. We just redeveloped over in Four Corners on the south of Beacon Street. And a bunch of them were just redeveloped, but
We put it-
And we left them as they were.
No,
no,
we
No.
didn't.
residential.
South of Beacon, we
Yeah,
changed those to
yeah,
residential.
yeah.
Yeah.
762 for sure.
I mean, we
Oh, I-
nominated them, we haven't done
I guess I
anything.
Yeah.
would have, if I thought we were leaving them and I would have disagreed then too. Okay, all right, well then that's fine, I guess as long as we're being consistent.
Well, I feel confident we're consistent, but we're making decisions, so let's we can always revisit all of these, but we're trying to get down to a candidate class. Of properties to give help to the departments to do something.
All of these to the
Okay.
48.
So just as a, something to
Just
keep in mind,
stuff.
zoning is thinking of future uses, so even if something has recently been redeveloped, just as we've heard in previous discussions, like, something that was changed in zoning back in 1950s, we might take issue with today. People 50 years from now might take issue with decisions that are made today, so you're not planning on this round of what's gonna be redeveloped in the next 10 years, it's going to be, this is a living document that, yes, we look at from time to time, but what parcels are rezoned as can stay that way for 50, 100 years. So you do have to have a very long view of it, just, I'll get.
Okay, so are we now clear on where we are for 8, this particular question?
Did we do the one on Colella?
So I can speak to that,
Yeah,
I'll.
I'm gonna go to Colella, okay?
Didn't we just talk about it?
So I'll have to double check, I think the reason that it wasn't captured in the map is because the map captured.
Oh.
Residential uses of 1 to 3 units, and that one is likely 4 units already, and so that's why it wasn't. Mapped, just to provide the reasoning,
I only see 2 units. Wait a minute.
that's Hanson Road.
The corner lot, so we have the housing authority property and then, that corner one, if it wasn't 1 to 3 units, it did not get included.
It's only 2 units, yeah.
It's
It's
only
only
2
2 units.
Yeah,
Okay.
55
Well,
Colella.
We'll find out right now, it's 2 units.
If it's within the, regardless of the number of units, should we include it? I mean,
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so.
I might have some insight. So it was approved as a special permit for 2 units. I'm seeing on the assessor's database, there's a master deed. So it does look like there's kind of 3 entries on the assessor. So perhaps that precluded it from being included.
But I'm hearing that regardless of the number of units, there's a sentiment to include the parcel, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So are you clear on this one? All right, can we go to the next one? We're
So-
making, Folks, we almost got it.
So we're gonna get the tougher ones.
Well, we got the special permit criteria.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sorry about that. We'll fix that. A lot of content here. So now we're looking at Peabody Street where it meets Washington Street. Kind of a similar situation that we saw, earlier where you have a, very busy corridor and then it starts to transition into residential. There is some pretty significant large multifamily with 10+ stories across the street. That being said, we're looking a couple of parcels in. There is some pretty significant massing across from these. So, yeah.
So this is Ward 6.
This is actually
One.
one.
Yeah, there was a switcheroo in the labels.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, what's on Washington should stay BU on Washington.
Yeah, but I think also on Peabody.
Yeah.
What about Peabody? Those two Peabody properties?
those properties, because they
I mean, again, remember, we're talking about the possibility, not that this is likely to be made commercial so much as it's it may be a very big residential. Is this the place you want that, Clinton Street or not? This is the question we're asking. So that's the policy choice.
So the thing is, 21-23, 21 and 25-27 is across the street from a big commercial building. So it's not like it's across the street from other houses. So,
But they back up to residential houses,
no, but,
right? I mean, again, this is, we don't have a Ward 1 counselor here, so we're
They back up to mixed use.
Yeah, so if you go to the use chart, so red is commercial, this golden color is multifamily.
right. So again, anybody on committee want to include these? If not, we can move on.
Include meaning.
Change the zone.
No, I would leave them.
Well, I would change them.
Counselor Gordon?
Sorry, Chair Baker,
Yeah.
I would change the ones on Peabody.
I think, yeah,
To me, they seem appropriate to as anomalies a bit, because they're backing up apparently to residential uses, It's one thing if you're right on Washington Street, but these are not. So again, to me, they make sense to change, but
oh, you're saying on one side they're backing up to residential.
yeah,
I will clarify,
Okay.
34 is mixed use. Doesn't read very well on the screen, but there's dots there, so that one is a mixed use.
yeah, but 34, it looks like a house. It might have some businesses in there, but it's a, more.
Yeah, and what about the ones
Looks
on
like house.
Channing?
No, 34.
On Channing.
Yeah.
So
Channing,
these are multifamilies.
Well, they're being,
Oh.
yeah, see, it's the ones that I'm looking at are 30 to 30. Right, there's right.
Yeah.
so folks, where are we at? Let me just get a sense of the committee. These two seem to make sense to me to change, with Counselor Gordon. Anybody else interested?
Well, they seem like there are 4 of them right there. The 2 on Channing and then the 2 on PBD are all designated BU1. And then they abut MR2. Right? That's what we're seeing.
Yeah.
And they're from the 1890s. So this is old, in the sense of, that they predate probably all of the development that happened.
Yeah, they predate the zoning that was
And,
put in place on it.
you
They
know,
were residential from the beginning.
so I'm sort of wondering, why the Channing properties weren't identified.
The way that it's done horizontally, it's all BU. And then vertically, you get into the residential. I think the consistency is good.
Meaning to keep them residential?
No, to keep them current.
Commercial.
Well, again,
Business.
they're unlikely to be turned into business. The question is, again, will they turn into big residential? If you're comfortable with that outcome, you leave them alone.
Yeah.
But the chances are they may get redeveloped. the point is this a situation which is an anomaly that ought to be corrected? Counselor Gordon thinks so, I think so, but I don't hear the rest of the committee.
So like 3032 Channing was a two-family from 1880. So it was built in 1880 as a two-family, so it wasn't never built as a business.
I understand that. The question is again, do we want to, is there sentiment in the committee beyond the two members who said yes to do this? If not, then I think we ought to move on. Much as it's a decision I disagree with, but that's all right. Counselor Gordon?
I just want to say one thing, which is, I think one of these at least is a triple decker. And these look like the kinds of housing that we're hoping that people will build. And so I feel like we should be trying to keep them as opportunities for people to live in Newton that may be at a threshold that somebody can afford, that are certainly probably less than $1.5 to $2 million houses. So that to me seems like we should want to keep those as residential, not necessarily knock them down into something bigger and more expensive.
That is persuasive to me, but I'm already there. So anybody else?
The only thought that I'm having is that it abuts MR2, but it's one lot away.
Yes, no?
Oh.
Tell me where you want to go. We got 2 people in favor, we got 7 people in the.
I would leave it as well.
There are 2 to leave it alone.
I'm torn.
I am too, because it's so close to it's one side.
So,
In the interest of
yeah.
time, we could put it on the maybe list.
Yeah.
We'll have.
We're gonna have another
Townhouse,
conversation.
yeah,
on
we
this,
can
but
look at two.
We're gonna, I'm trying to eliminate some that we don't want to do and leave the ones that, and so this is in the maybe category, all right? Okay, let's go on, because again.
And apologies for the mislabeling on the bottom of the
No,
last few slides.
that's
I'll okay, now I'm gonna officially pass it over to Nora.
Okay.
Section is much shorter.
Hey, what about all the ones over like on Adam Street and Clinton Street and stuff like that?
We did those as previous, yeah, this was everything but,
Else.
yeah.
Well, we're gonna, Justin.
Unless you wanna speak.
So let me be clear about at least this portion of where I think we've come, which is you have some relative clarity about the rezoning in the big Ward 1 categories, right? You did that before. And then you have some categories here where you've got some clarity of pretty much unanimous committee views, maybe one or, an outlier here. That's all right. And then a member not on the committee, but at least fairly strong sentiment. And then a couple of maybes, right? Like the last one we did. So I think what we would look for is to have you go back and take another look at the maybes. And then pull together sort of a comprehensive package of the changes that would be made. Because at that point, and then just bring them to the committee one last time to maybe think about what we would take to a public hearing, because all of this is moot unless we actually do something. So we'd have to figure out when you would be ready to get a package ready to put to a public hearing for these site-specific rezonings. Right? Does that make sense? And so it's not that you have to do it for the next meeting, but it's just, that's where we would have to go with this. And at the meeting where we discuss it, I would like to sort of get a sense of the committee that we would move forward on the ones that we agreed to resolve the questions of the uncertainties and then send it out for public hearing, and then we decide what we do with it. Because you've spent a lot of time on this, and I don't want you to just have this be time spent. It's got to be time spent for a purpose. But what the objective is, I've heard it all along, is to make sure that the potential, leaving aside the height problem at Clinton Street, of the Clinton Street outcome is not replicated in other parts of the city, because we haven't had an opportunity to fix the zoning at the site. And that's really what the purpose of all this is. Okay, because that's it.
For the site specific.
For the site specific, okay. Now, is everybody okay with that as a process so far? Okay, all right. Then as far as the other question, which we'd asked you to look at, is the special permit criteria, which is there are some situations where we would leave the zoning alone, but somebody comes in for a special permit, the special permit is going to have some criteria that allows context to be considered, and you all have come up with, including the proposed dimensions. So I want to give you a chance to explain that part of it, if you would.
Absolutely. So I will just quickly read the existing finding. So the city council shall not approve any application for a special permit unless it finds that the application meets all the following criteria. And the first of that criteria currently is the specific site is an appropriate location for such use. And then in legal language, they don't like to do this, but and or structure. So we met with the law department, we went with our counterparts in the current planning team division, and came up with the addition of including the proposed dimensions. I know this is a little bit different than what we have talked about in June, and I want to talk us all through those discussions. We originally started saying, based off of the existing context or exploring language of that nature. And as we thought of how that could apply to different areas, we've seen many tonight. The context isn't always the same, and it isn't always desirable. And so if you go to the next slide, I think the perfect example of this is Four Corners, where we have 1 3+ story office building. We've got that, very short, flat strip mall typology. We have a gas station. And so we didn't want to create language that would put the land use committee in a bind, having to make a finding that a proposal meets the existing context in terms of its dimensionality, because that existing context isn't necessarily uniform or desirable. And so that's how we landed on this language of, for the proposed use and structure, including the proposed dimensions, to add explicit consideration of the scale and massing as it relates to the location, and give greater attention to the dimensional compatibility. And that's all.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. And I have a question just on this. Is this a special permit criteria only for the business use situations that we're talking about? Or is this going to be a generic
Across the board.
across the board? Because we've had, I think, if I recall, some special permit criteria that may be unique to specific situations, but I'm not sure I'm accurate about that. But you're recommending this as across the board. The second part is, if that's the context does, however, matter in some contexts. I mean, if I can be permitted to use the term twice. If you were talking about a wholly, like the Clinton Street example, you would look at that and say, that context is clearly small scale residential around it. We would not have wanted to have a big building there, even in this kind of, and so the question is, does this get us to the ability to legitimately consider the surroundings as opposed to just saying it's big?
Yeah, so I think if you look at the first part of the sentence, which maybe I should have bolded the word location instead, this is asking the question, is the massing appropriate for this location? And so I would hope that in the Clinton scenario, the massing, the location and the massing would have been considered, and inherently that's contextual.
And law says this is fine then, right?
Yeah, we met
Yeah.
with them with this language, you never know, they may like tweak it down the line, but as much as we could get the stamp of approval for the purposes of this meeting.
Yeah.
Had a question.
Oh, no, I'm.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I have 2 comments. One is that just, it's basically game over, right? So if you object to a special permit application, there's that hook you hang your hat on regardless of where you want to go, right? So you can be saying it's appropriate location, it's context, not context. If you don't like the proposed dimensions as a city councilor, hat hooked, which is fine, it just kind of nullifies our special permit criteria into anything goes.
Right.
That's number one. Number two is, I think there are enough concerns about our special permit criteria that I would encourage that to look at special criteria more broadly. We don't currently talk about housing. We don't currently talk about climate, which would also be valuable criteria to some of us. So I think one tweak to special permit criteria is not the right way to go at this point. I know it solves the particular problem that the Clinton Street. So one, it's basically, if you object to a special permit, you can now just stand up and say object to its proposed dimensions, boom, we're done. But I also think that it would be time to look really at the special permit criteria more comprehensively to address housing and climate specifically.
Okay, thank you for that. For our purposes, tonight, however, I think we have to respond to the department's recommendation. I do think context is an appropriate element, and if this gets us closer to that, it seems to me a wise decision to have. I mean, we've seen that members of the council can object to special permits for all sorts of reasons.
Right, and they get spanked by the chair of land use for saying you haven't hung your hat on a particular hook.
Well, never mind. I mean, no disrespect to that point, but it's separate from the one I think we have to respond to here. So I appreciate the departments. I would have preferred something a little more explicitly representing the context, but I understand where the issue is where the context is not clear. And so you're saying this gives you the ability to make those decisions even in the context unclear situation as well as the context clear situation. So
I'll just clarify, I don't think we have a formal recommendation. The current planning folks were a little on the fence about this. But we really wanted to make sure we were giving the committee what was asked,
Okay.
so this is
So
what we
let me
landed
get
on.
a sense of the committee. I would prefer to have something more rather than less. Oh, excuse me, Councilor.
Yeah, I guess I don't see the problem with explicitly referring to context because the context in, I don't know how often it even comes up where it's as diverse as Four Corners, but if the context is that there is no consistency, you would not use context, but in the cases where the context is consistent, then you could use it. So I guess I don't see the problem with explicitly referring to context.
I have to agree with you, but I'm interested in getting a sense of the committee, so. How are the members of the committee feeling? Councilor Guest.
We have to sit with this for a little
not.
bit, because
Okay,
I just
say
sort of,
again?
I have to sit with this for a little bit, because I think that I hear what Councilor Roach is saying. You know, in terms of, it feels incredibly broad, you know, and to me, it sort of feels as if, you know, it's an opportunity to, you know, nullify, you know, to be able to say, just because it does.
Special permit is discretionary anytime,
Correct.
so let's not, it's a question of whether you want the criteria to include context in some way. This is a backdoor way of doing it, as I hear it from the department. Okay, now, you may disagree with that, but it seems to me that that's why we asked them to do this, because there's a situation where you could have a special permit being granted under the current zoning, and if you say, look, it meets all of it's certainly appropriate for the site, but its impact on the neighbors is such that, you know, we're not considering the context, and this is an attempt to do that. I would prefer what Councilor Maliki has indicated, but I'm just one member of the committee, so I'm trying to get a sense of the committee's view on this subject. And at this timely moment to
Right.
get us in and out of here.
Okay.
So, other members of the committee, Councilor Donovan.
I agree with you, Chair Baker, that I think, and I don't, as a general rule, I don't like backdoor ways to doing things, I'd rather say what we mean.
Yeah.
And have it be that, and so I like the idea that there's a way to consider context, but I'm inclined. Not to lean towards this as the way to do it, because this doesn't feel like. The right tool for achieving that. And I understand that it might be tricky to figure out what the right tool is, but this doesn't feel like it to me.
Okay, Councilor Kate?
I just wouldn't mind seeing other options where maybe the word context is in there.
I would too. So I think let's do this. The next iteration come back, I would like you to take a look at the context. There may be other jurisdictions that have done something that you've not done. And if there's a way to think about it, and I think it's actually going to be a relevant consideration for some of the work we're going forward, because part of the difficulty with the whole tear down conversation is again, the context. Some places it works, some places it doesn't, and we've heard that already. So I would entertain at this point, if the sense of the committee is that we would like to at least see some alternatives along Councilor Kalis's point to this language, but to accomplish the same objective before we make a decision on it, then I would like to do that. Is that okay with the committee?
Yeah.
Yeah, Councilor Kalis?
Move hold on the item.
Hmm?
I'm gonna move hold on the item.
Yeah, but let me just finish that point.
Oh.
All right, we agreed? All right, I'm just trying to give direction to them.
Trying to
We went for 3 hours and 15 minutes, we made another 5.
Hey, Newton Historic goes to midnight and 1 AM.
They're, they get
Oh,
paid
yeah.
less than we do, so never mind.
I think I would just add that if somehow we're consider context. There should be a system of criteria for understanding what about that context we're considering. We have some places where we say the setback should be the average of the parcels adjacent. That seems like the kind of reasonable. Dimensional consideration that gets built into how do we actually consider context as opposed to a sort of big broad. Think about the context, well, the context is the Boston reading or what, so. I would just put that in there as part of your thinking as you come up with options.
All right, so we, with that, the thought that the more specificity sometimes is helpful, not necessarily exclusive, but guidance. So I will now entertain Councilor Kalis's motion.
Move hold.
Okay, thank you. And I want to commend the department on this before we vote, just because I think they've spent a lot of time trying to go through some very site-specific and giving us the sense of the criteria that they did. I really didn't quite understand the light system until you explained it, but now I do.
It's very helpful.
Was really quite helpful, and I think that we should cheer when cheers are won. So there we go. Anyway, now, we have 2 other items that are before the committee, which are very minor, easy to dispose of. But nonetheless, we have to talk about them at least to decide what we do. And let me explain. Yeah, oh, I'm sorry, you're absolutely right. And there was a motion to hold, but no vote. All those in favor of holding, say aye.
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 Opposed, abstention, okay. The last 2 items are items which are, I'm just gonna read them. First was item 8426, discuss the impact of recent ordinance changes on costs and new growth. And then the other is discussion of partial amendment to the 60% facade build out ordinance. These I wanted to bring to the committee just to get a sense of the scope, because they're both that require a significant amount of work and figure out where we're going. And because Councilor Kalis was the lead author on both, I mentioned to him that the opportunity we had was to try and figure out some ways to make some specific issues available to the department to carry forward with analysis, because these are so big. So, for example, the conflict between the tree ordinance and the water runoff.
Stormwater.
Stormwater, where you have 2 positive objectives, but inconsistent outcomes. And so I wanted to give Councilor Kalis but I'm going to take a motion to hold both of these items just to say something about what where you would like to see these go, or they can be the subject of specific docket items later.
Yeah.
But I think the point is that there's embedded in here maybe some specifics that you want to consider at some point.
I don't have any, the specifics I'm looking for are some examples. So as you can see, you can immediately go back to some examples you've had in the past and just say, well, there's this and there's this. It'd be good, I think, for the committee to understand a few examples of where we have those inconsistencies or that tension. And then we can discuss how to approach it.
Okay.
So I think with examples, that would help.
Well, and
then maybe we'd have an outflow of other items versus this.
Okay.
For now, I would hold it.
All right, and then the build out ordinance, we just haven't had enough experience, I think, yet to give you a good answer on that.
The 60, I wanna just articulate why I put this in here. It's all, I live on an odd shaped lot, and when this passed, at the last minute, I kind of was like, oh, I didn't feel like we had discussed it. And so I called around, and I know that I talked to Councilor Wright, who said, yeah, we did discuss it, and I don't know if I was fully listening, functional, I don't know. But then I did talk to somebody in planning who's not here. And they were like, and I gave them some examples, and their answer was, well, I'm not really sure. We didn't have that situation. And that didn't sit well with me. And I started thinking, I'd like to have more of a robust discussion around these odd shaped lots and how it does impact them. So we just know clearly what we've done. And we haven't heard anything, you're right, which is great. But it's just, that's why I brought it up.
The other,
Okay, go ahead.
I gotta be called on, but there have been some special permits come in for the 60% facade ratio, but those were regular lots.
Yeah.
And they wanted to do it, well, the ones I.
Elliott Street is.
Okay, but there was always that option, but taking a look at those and what's coming in for a special permit would help.
Yeah.
But they can always do a special permit for those, yeah.
Yeah, so just in preparation, I took a quick look at those. There's been 3, and at least 2 of them, it was it surprised me, but it makes sense now that I've seen it. It has to do with the combination of the facade ratio and how we're now measuring height from existing grades. So, some of them, they look like 1 story from the street. But then because they're adding an addition on a sloped lot, they're technically 2 stories, so they're not exempt from the facade ratio, and so that's why they need a special permit, so. Not an odd shaped lot, but a different kind of maybe unintended consequence of 2 ordinance amendments.
So, let me go, Councilor Roach, go ahead.
Real quick, I think that, the lot that Ms. Paul is talking about is a great example. And I think the problem is that the compounding effect of the basement and the facade width. And I think had we given guidance, we being planning and land use, to say this is what's more important and seek relief here, we would have gotten a better outcome. And I think that and perhaps it might be useful for zoning and planning to say facade ratio is more important than the basement measurement, and therefore encourage folks on an odd shaped lot to abide by the facade ratio and seek relief in the other division. And I think they were seeking relief in the backward priority.
Yeah. I don't know if that's our function to give guidance as much as, but I think that, but maybe so. So, we have sort of 2 outputs here. At least the first one, you would like some examples of potential ordinance conflicts, right? And then the second situation, just to take a look at perhaps the special permit or the odd shaped lot and see what, if there are any adjustments to the ordinance that make sense, or at least the land use permitting criteria.
Right, and what I might do is hold it now, let me speak with Ms. Colella. and then maybe we can bring it up and dismiss it, I'm not sure.
Well, we're gonna have a whole battery of things, but we wanted to get this on the table because there's some things that I think are going to consume the committee, especially with some state law changes, so we're going to, and potentially a referendum and all sorts of stuff coming down, and so I can't promise when this will come back, but at least we have some sense of where we might go with this, I think. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay, are you all clear on what we're doing?
Just for the cost of new growth, do you want an example of a permit all the way through? To see kind of the compiling impacts, or just the like example friction points?
My recommendation is the friction point in two ordinances which seem to conflict with each other, because otherwise you're going to have a huge job of
We're
doing.
already working on something similar to that, so it wouldn't be a big lift, but I just wanted to get.
If it's not a big lift, go for it, but otherwise I agree. with Tom.
I think we should have where the conflicts are, because I think there might be a bunch of them, and then we need to pick which ones to dig down into.
I'd like to start with the conflicts and then go to the global, if that's all right. Just because again,
That's fine.
part of the challenges of time and effort you all have to put in. And I want to try and allocate that too. So, do you want to hold on both items?
Yes, but
All
I
right.
think we should talk a little bit more and hang out.
Motion to hold. All those in favor will say on both items.
Aye.
Opposed, mentioned, thank you very much. And thank you all for being so patient and sticking around. And also our very able clerk, Mr. Starkey, you're going to get a sense out of all this. For us,
So we're gonna.
Ms. Fury, we're so glad you're here and hope you get home. Before dawn.
A little past my bedtime.
Councilor Gordon, thank you very much for coming.